Thing that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company this Sunday morning. There's an awful lot to discuss, including the hundreds, quite literally hundreds of Palestine Action supporters who've been lifted. Also those migrant protests at hotels right across the country. We'll talk as well about the fact that Bob Villan, Pascal Robinson Foster, the one who shouted death, death to the IDF. The investigation apparently ongoing, but they've been booked to perform at Boardmasters. This is a big music festival in Cornwall. We'll also talk about the government's plan for foreign criminals to face immediate deportation. What do you think of that? Also, Robert Jenrick, who was in this studio yesterday, saying that he cares far more about his young girls, his daughters, than he does about foreign criminals. Where should the priorities of the government lie? Let us know your thoughts about that. Vladimir Zelensky may attend this big Alaska summit as well between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. And social media giants facing fines for overzealous free speech crackdowns. I'm definitely worried about free speech in this country. I'm sure you are too. We're asking the question as well this morning about the direction of crime and punishment in the UK. Where is it going? Where should it go? Are the right people being prosecuted? What about those foreign criminals? Should they be sent back immediately, or do you think they should serve their time in this country? Because if they are sent back, will they serve any time? Let me know your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 1 o'clock here on Talk. Stay with us. Mick's been in touch already and says, Peter, all those ever so caring lefty vicars, teachers, civil servants and lecturers supporting Palestine Action obviously have no concern for the young police officers who have had their leave and family holidays cancelled for months. They are simply sad, frustrated, attention-seeking frauds, says Mick. The thing with Palestine Action, this is what gets me, and I interviewed their lawyer, or one of their lawyers, the other day. I think it was on Friday on Drive. Really straightforwardly, they all did the same sign. they said, you know, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I am against genocide or genocide in Gaza. And then they said, I support Palestine Action. If they'd literally deleted one word, if they'd deleted the word action and simply wrote, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action, if they'd taken 6 letters off that and simply put, I support Palestine, well, they would not have been arrested. So why do they want to support a prescribed group? That's my question. I don't understand that. I understand the issues that people might have about prescription or freedom of speech or all those kind of issues. I get that. But in the act of supporting Palestine Action, holding up a sign that doesn't simply say something like Palestine Action shouldn't have been prescribed or something like that, well, actually, it's not the snappiest of slogans, it must be said. Well, that in itself would meant they hadn't been arrested. They want to be arrested. That's clear. And the Metropolitan Police have to deal with that. Well, Peter Blexley is with us. He's the former Metropolitan Police detective and is with us now. Peter, just give us your thoughts on what happened yesterday. It was a huge police operation and something like 466 people lifted simply for supporting Palestine Action. I don't think they should do that. I don't think they should be supporting prescribed groups. There were a few arrests as well for alleged assault of police officers.
The rule of law is absolutely fundamental to our society. If we have a breakdown of law and order, then we have anarchy. We have nothing, and we are all in grave, grave danger. Yesterday, the Metropolitan Police, with assistance from other forces who'd been drafted in, under the leadership of Deputy Assistant Commissioner Adi Adelakan, put forward an operation that outwitted, outthought, outflanked those pathetic and pious Palestine Action supporters. It was a huge victory for the rule of law. It was with huge praise that I thank the Metropolitan Police. And overall, this is policing as we need to see it done.
Well, that is a ringing endorsement, Peter, of someone who is a very fair commentator on policing, who criticises it when it fails. You've praised it this morning. Tell us about the preparation that will have gone into that. The fact that so many people have been arrested as well, that is going to put lots of pressure on the system. We know that a number of people were arrested and then immediately bailed. In fact, they didn't even go to police stations. Is that effective?
Yes. Palestine Action stupidly declared that their intention was to try and break the capacity of the Metropolitan Police. In the London area, there are around 530 police cells. So Palestine Action's idiotic idea was that if they could fill every cell to the point of overflowing even, then they would grind the Metropolitan Police to a halt. What they didn't realise is that the Met have some experience and deployed a tactic called street bailing of people. And what that means is that when somebody was arrested, they were taken to a desk, essentially, where their details were checked, any identification was shown, and if the police could absolutely guarantee that the person in front of them who had been arrested was who they said they were, then they were street bailed. In other words, they were bailed to return to a police station at a later time when the police investigation will be continued. It was a masterstroke. The cells did not get filled to capacity. Anybody, by the way, who didn't give details that they couldn't corroborate, they were arrested and taken to a cell. It was effective. It was a wonderful way to outflank these idiots who thought that their numbskull plan could outwit the Metropolitan Police. And I simply do not have enough praise this morning for Deputy Assistant Commissioner Adelakan, who during the week said, we have enough resources to cater with any situation. They did it superbly, and I remain full of praise for their efforts yesterday.
The interesting thing from my perspective, and well done the Metropolitan Police for arresting these people, and I hope that all of them face the full force of the law. I'll be very, very interested to see how many of them serve any time behind bars. That'll be very interesting to see. I just want to, the top sentence for this would be 14 years. I think it's probably unlikely that those people will serve 14 years. I just wonder from that perspective, a lot of the stories we cover, including in regard to asylum, are things where political will or operational will means things can happen. Now, clearly there was a lot of operational will from the Metropolitan Police to say, we know basically the score here, we're going to police this correctly and we're going to make sure that we arrest the people who need to be arrested. I just wonder, given the policing and the lack of arrests, I know there have been some, but the lack of arrests for people who are blatantly holding up signs saying they support Hamas, for example, another proscribed terrorist organisation. In fact, far worse. It has done far worse things than Palestine Action. Not that I'm condoning for a second anything Palestine Action has done, and Hezbollah, and so on. Those have been seen openly on the pro-Palestinian protests. So the Metropolitan Police, well done them, have shown they can grip this situation. Why is it, do you think, Peter, that they can't grip a protest that has had much the same thing, in fact worse in some regards, over and over and over again?
An excellent question. And I have been a most fervent critic of the Metropolitan Police when they have been reluctant to enter into protest marches with snatch squads, for want of a better expression, and remove people who have been chanting filth or displaying placards that are entirely inappropriate and, in fact, illegal. We have seen a leaning towards more robust policing of these protest marches when the law's been broken in recent times. Policing needs to be consistent, and I think your question is one that really ought to be perhaps put to the most senior police officer in the land, Sir Mark Rowley. But I do see some encouraging signs. Yesterday, of course, was a flagrant breach of the law, which simply could not be tolerated. The Metropolitan Police, I'm sure, realise that our nation is a tinderbox, and I'm sure they don't want to see it go up in flames, much as I don't. But we will have to see.
Peter, a couple of other stories around, one about Bob Villain, the group which involves Pascal Robinson Foster. He doesn't like us using his name, he wants to be anonymous, so if you could avoid saying Pascal Robinson Foster at any point, Peter, just Pascal Robinson Foster is something who doesn't want his name out there, so apologies to Pascal Robinson Foster, and indeed all the Robinson Fosters, including Pascal, for mentioning his name. Bob Villain are due to perform at the Boardmasters Festival in Cornwall. We know that Avon and Somerset Police say inquiries are ongoing into this. How long do inquiries need to go on into an incident which was blatantly clear? It was broadcast on national television, and millions of people saw the clip of him saying death, death to the IDF.
Yes, justice delayed is justice denied. I really can't see why it would take the Crown Prosecution Service longer than about an hour to come to a decision as to whether Pascal Robinson, whatever his name is, should be charged or not. But of course, it is another fundamental cornerstone of our democracy that people are innocent until proven guilty. He has not been charged yet. He has not, therefore, been convicted over the chance at Glastonbury. So he is free to appear at this other festival. Personally, I couldn't think of anything I would less like to do on a sunny weekend afternoon. So I most certainly will not be going to watch this man, who I quite frankly find abhorrent.
Yes, and I wonder what you make of the story in many of the papers today about foreign criminals facing immediate deportation. Where do you stand on this, Peter? Because the debate essentially goes, I'm not sure what I think, to be honest. I'd love viewers and listeners to tell me what they think. 0344 499 1000. Because if you catch a foreign criminal, they're convicted, they go to prison. Now, at the moment, they can serve about half their sentence, and then they look to deport them. That could go down to 30% of the sentence from 50%. But the point is, of course, if they go back to their home country, great, get them out of the country, that's fine. They may not actually serve any more time. So they might, overall, get quite a light sentence. I just wonder what you think as with your professional background, Peter, in all of this.
Well, I have a very unique kind of view on how to reform the criminal justice system, particularly with regards to the prison service. And that would be that I would abolish every sentence less than 4 years. If you went to prison, you would only go to prison for a term of 4 years, and you would serve those 4 years. So under my system, which I sadly think will never be adopted, my attitude would be the same. Any foreign criminal that commits a crime gets immediately deported, unless they are going to serve 4 years or more, in which case they serve their full term and then get deported. We need to think about victims here. We are having people murdered on the streets of Britain by foreigners, sometimes by migrants, and the victims' families need to be safe in the knowledge that these prisoners will serve their 25, 30, 35, 40 years and therefore get their punishment in the UK before they are sent to another country where, quite frankly, the authorities there might have a much more relaxed attitude to a crime committed many, many miles away, and they might just say, on your way, pal.
Peter, you talked about Bob Villan there. You said you couldn't think of anything worse. You presumably won't be booking tickets to Boardmasters, the festival. If you were to book tickets to some sort of event perhaps happening in the theatre over the next few months, what would you recommend, Peter?
Well, I'm delighted to say that on the 8th of January 2026, my one-man show starts touring around the UK, coming to a theatre near you, whether you're in Scotland, Wales, Ireland, any part of England, and it would be an absolute joy if you went on to peterblexley.com, checked out a theatre near yourself and bought a ticket. Thank you very much.
Sounds good, Peter, as I'm a fan of the shameless plug. Plenty of those coming on my forthcoming book before too long. Peter Blexley, thank you so much. Peter is, of course, a former Metropolitan Police detective, author, raconteur, and honestly, that tour, you can go on his website and have a look. We've had a tweet from the Home Office. Net migration is falling by ending reliance on overseas recruits. We're providing homegrown workers with more opportunities. The Home Office says the skilled worker threshold has been raised to degree level, ensuring employers invest in Britain's skills and talent. Do you think the Home Office has any grip on all of this? What about deporting foreign criminals? What do you make of all of that? Thank you to Mark in Norfolk, who says, when did overt support for an acknowledged terrorist group become a lesser offence than writing a hearty tweet? Well, I'd be really interested, actually, Mark. That's a very good point. And I do worry that a lot of these people will be given a slap on the wrist, will be given maybe a police caution, maybe charges will be dropped, not even made, or indeed dropped against them. I just wonder how many of these 466 people will see the inside of a prison cell, just as Lucy Connolly still has 31 months in. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination, and not for in any way condoning inciting violence, which is the charge that she pleaded guilty to. Should she have? Well, that's a debate. Was she badly advised? Many people say she was. But she is in prison for a tweet. If you are supporting Palestine Action, well, the longest sentence for that could be 14 years. What about giving all these people 31 months? What about saying, do you know what? 31 months would actually be a really good sentence. It would be a good length of time to show people that we're going to make an example of them, just as the justice system, rightly or wrongly, I think wrongly, made for Lucy Connolly, who I think should have been given a caution, a slap on the wrist. Don't do it again. Off you go. On your way, Mrs. Connolly. What do you think of all of this? 0344 499 1000. We'll go to the debate desk next. We've got Paul Richards and Phil Dave with us this morning. We'll put all the different stories to them, including the White House considering inviting Vladimir Zelensky to attend Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin's Alaska summit. Should he go? We'll see what our panel think. Stay with us.
whether it would help, an ID card would help control the illegal working of asylum seekers, but actually we couldn't see why it would help. So for lots of reasons, but fundamentally the fact that we don't trust this government, do we, to have any more information about our lives. And just one more point to mention as well, the recent online safety bill debate also has made us, because that's a complete smokescreen for controlling free speech.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Graham's been in touch and says, imagine Rupert Lowe mistaking a rowing boat for the RNLI. Well, he thought it was a migrant boat off the coast of Norfolk. We're actually going to be talking to one of the rowers in that boat that Rupert Lowe mistakenly thought was migrants coming to, I'm not really sure whether they're going to Norfolk, but anyway, and Norfolk's a lovely place, and I'm sure it has its charms, but they usually come across the English Channel. Anyway, Rupert Lowe made a mistake. He's given the group, the rowers, £1,000 towards their charity, charitable cause, which I think is motor neurone disease. It is motor neurone disease, I'm told. What we know, of course, is that one of the rowers will apparently be joining us a little bit later in the programme. It's off the North Norfolk coast, of course, where they were, but they're going from Land's End to John O'Groats or the other way. I'm not sure, but we will see what the rower says. He's apparently at sea, and let's hope he gets a signal. I'm sure there's absolutely no potential for it to go wrong in any way. Thank you to Elisa from Chelmsford, who says, good morning, Peter. Had the police reacted to the pro-Palestinian marches, i.e. hate marches, the way they did yesterday, and that's in regard to the Palestine Action protesters, they would have nipped them in the bud. They would have saved millions in taxpayers' money and saved huge distress caused to the Jewish community. I'll be marching for the hostages today, and I hope lots of your listeners will join me. There is a march in London at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Martin in Whitley Bay says Palestine Action protester Planks getting a criminal record. With the time they seem to have on their hands, I'd imagine many are partial to a foreign holiday. Good luck getting into the USA, etc., after having to declare their misdemeanours on the in-flight forms. That's Martin in Whitley Bay there. Sean in Bridlington says, Peter, this from the Telegraph sums up the Palestine Action fans yesterday. He remarked that an arrest would spoil his evening, as he planned to attend a poetry reading in support of the Palestinian cause at 7 o'clock. You couldn't make this up, says Sean in Bridlington. I mean, you couldn't. Right, let's go to the debate desk, and Phil Dave is with me, as is Paul Richards. Phil is broadcaster, Paul is a former Labour Special Advisor. It's great to have you on the programme. Let's talk about Palestine Action. Paul, your thoughts on the arrest of many hundreds of people who said they were in support of a proscribed terrorist group?
Well, there were two demos in London yesterday. One was the one that happens every few weeks through central London that people choose to go on, and they shout and dress up and do whatever they want to do. The second was
in support of the Palestinian
cause, very broadly. Yeah. Guardian readers, people that shop at Waitrose, usual types.
Well, there are a few others as well there who have signs supporting people like Hamas and Hezbollah.
The other group was the ones who went to Parliament Square with the handmade sign saying, I support this organisation. And they were told very clearly by the police they would be arrested under terrorism offences, they would be carted off, and they refused to move. They were offered the chance to move out of the square, and after a while the police started to make arrests quite rightly. Now, what I think the problem here is that the people who were sort of egged on to do this, I think thought they were just taking part in a demo where they get a slap on the wrists and they could be boasting about this to their mates in the pub that night. They are in fact now going to be charged under terrorism offences. They will have their lives altered beyond all recognition. Those of their families will be changed. They won't be able to travel or get jobs or get loans, and the people who egged them on and said, oh, don't worry, you'll get a slap on the wrist, where are they? They've run a mile. They're not the ones being arrested, are they? Particularly those young people, I think, who are just very naive, are being egged on to do this. And this is it's a disgrace.
The point is, though, as any first-year law student will tell you, ignorance is no defence.
No, I know.
It has been completely, I'm not arguing with you necessarily, I'm sort of complimenting your points by saying that they should know. I mean, if you are in support of a prescribed terrorist group, you will face the consequences.
But they were told, oh, you know, that we can overwhelm the justice system, you know, they can't arrest all of us, there'll be so many of us. And what the police did, of course, they bailed on the street, so they were bailed in, you know, in real time. They weren't clogging up the system at all. The police acted with great alacrity and will continue to do so. If it's 800, if it's 1,000, if it's 2,000, the police are going to keep going. And these people, you know, for whatever their motivation is, we can argue about whether they're right or wrong, but, you know, they are making life-changing decisions in that flash moment of just waving that placard in Parliament.
Yeah, it brings to mind the Northern Irish phrase when I think of these things, slap it up you. Phil?
Well, I think at long blooming last we're starting to see the police behaving the way that they should have done a long time ago with any of these protests, but in particular...
That was exactly my point to Peter Blexley. Had they done that with the people who are, not everybody's breaking the law with the pro-Palestinian protests, but a lot of people are.
No, but they're not. But at the same time, it just demonstrates the level of ignorance that we are seeing at all of these marches, because a great number of these marches, if not all of them, have been organised by pro-Hamas organisations. And the reason that you can prove this is, have you ever noticed in London, I appreciate that for those listening outside of London this might be a bit tricky, but bear with me, but if you've ever noticed when travelling around London, there are stickers all over the place of so-called Palestinian flags saying boycott Israeli apartheid and stuff like that. The problem is that someone is paying for those, right? All of this stuff, the banners that they're waving, they all look the same, the banners, because they're being funded, they're being professionally printed and handed out to the protesters at these marches. So there's a real organisation behind this, and it's that organisation that is in cahoots with the likes of Hamas and what have you. So as much as I understand, truly I understand that there are some people who look at the images coming out of Gaza, and I think anyone who's got half a heart would be very concerned by some of the things that we see coming out of Gaza. The difference is I know who to blame. That's the difference.
The point as well with all of that is you can support what you think is the Palestinian cause. You can support, I mean, I would like every Palestinian to live in peace. Preferably democracy.
So would every
as well.
true Palestinian, by the way.
And the point with the Palestinian cause is that's different from Palestine Action, isn't it, Paul?
Yes, I mean, there are other organisations you could choose to support on the Palestinian side of the debate.
And if those people with their placards had written, you know, I support Palestine
Solidarity Campaign
first,
or
you know,
whatever
I support Palestine. That's it. If they hadn't put the word action there, I mean, they could have saved themselves being arrested.
My main beef with them, is the point of who funds them, and we know a lot of this goes back to Iran. And the other point is that they have chosen a very deliberate course of being arrested. You know, they could have protested. Loads of people protested yesterday. People protest every week in London, but they very deliberately chose these provocative signs to flout the law and to get arrested on this sort of point of what they see as a point of principle. But I really genuinely don't believe so many of them actually believe the consequences.
Well, because they don't understand it. That's the problem, isn't it?
Well,
they don't understand
exactly
what they're supporting.
Well, they couldn't pick out the River Jordan on a map, most of them.
No,
it's just a slogan, it's just a lifestyle. You know, they dress up, don't they? They have a sort of look. It's an aesthetic, which they enjoy. And, you know, they get handed a placard by somebody else and go off and do the marching in the sunshine. Lovely. But these guys, you know, this is life-ending for these people. This is game over. They won't get jobs, loans, university education, visas. Their families will be blighted.
Some might say good.
I've absolutely no sympathy whatsoever.
Have you nearly got no sympathy then?
No, I've zero sympathy.
What about you mentioned Northern Ireland, right? I mean, surely a lot of young people got involved in terrorist organisations in Northern Ireland who were just young, naive, stupid, and had their lives blighted.
It's a choice.
No sympathy at all.
No sympathy whatsoever.
No, and I'll tell you why I agree with that completely, is that if you don't even know what you're supporting, why are you supporting it? Seriously.
Also, it is a choice.
Because people told them. People said, don't worry, you'll just get a slap on the wrist. So,
they should know better. Look at the Northern Ireland example is a good one. I've been asked basically that question by one particular friend in Dublin who said, wasn't this inevitable? And I give the example of two men of roughly the same generation who took different paths. One was Martin McGuinness, one was John Hume. John Hume won the Nobel Peace Prize. He was the leader of nationalism. I wouldn't have voted for him, but the decisions he made meant that my generation could grow up in peace. Martin McGuinness, I mean, you know, he became Deputy First Minister, but he was also a terrorist.
These are great men. These are not the
Martin McGuinness wasn't a great man.
These are not the 16-year-old scroats who were just dragged into the activity.
But they were both 16 at one stage, and Martin McGuinness was a member of the IRA. Anyway, listen, it's a slightly different argument. But nonetheless, listen, one thing we do on this station quite a lot is we hold the police's feet to the fire and we say, you do a bad job in certain different things. We'll talk about Bob Villan perhaps in a second. But do we agree? I'm not saying can we agree, I'm saying do we agree on this occasion in regard to Palestine Action? What sort of a job do you think the police have done, Phil?
Well, I personally think that it's a step in the right direction, but they've got an awful long way to go before I start thinking that they're on the correct side of the law again. Now, listen, I know full well there are going to be people who are in the Metropolitan Police who say, of course we're upholding the law, of course we're on the right side of the law, but I regret that the actions of an awful lot of officers have said otherwise over the course of the last couple of years, in particular since the 7th of October. But let's not forget that these marches have gone on for a very long time. It's not just since the 7th of October. I'm afraid that what we have seen is police officers who, it would appear at surface value, move along protesters who appear to be in favour of Israel and say, get out of the way, you know, you can't stay here, you can't do this. And yet you have people who are basically wearing terrorist scarves on the streets of London, and they are protecting them. They're ring-fencing them almost against public who are angry about it. It's people like that that really need to be brought to task. The arrests yesterday, absolutely a step in the right direction, not enough though. They need to.
What do you think of the job the police have done?
I think the Met did a very good job yesterday. I think we can start to nail this myth of two-tier policing that seems to have taken hold.
Not a myth.
It's not a myth.
Absolutely exists.
Because this is a good example of organisations of the left being rounded up, and very swift police action on that. But I do agree that certainly in the general election I observed where candidates were being abused racially or anti-Semitic chanting and all these things, and physically chased down the street and so on, and the police just stood back and said, oh, that's politics, that's free speech, we can't intervene. And that there was a pattern of that where in the particular elections where Islamists were standing as candidates and all the rest of it. So I think the police do need a bit of a dose of education around what is and what isn't the law, what is free speech and what is assault, and some of the nuances around this, because they don't seem to know in many cases.
Well, they've stopped people, for example, for carrying Palestinian flags. Now, I don't think people should display the Palestinian flag. That's my personal opinion. If people want to do that, that's a matter of freedom. That's their freedom to do so.
Understand what that flag symbolises.
No, right? But that's not my point. That's not the point, Phil. The point is that I know what it symbolises. I wouldn't display it.
You know
but
what it means.
I know. But look. The point is that if people want to display that flag, that's up to them. What I'm saying is that there have been police officers who've stopped people for doing that. That is not an illegal act.
No, but there's also coded symbolism.
Of course.
The
watermelon,
the triangle, the hang gliders. There's all kinds of stuff like that, which are overt displays of pro-Hamas propaganda. Yeah. But if the police don't know that, they can't do what they need to do.
But then I don't know why they're not briefed about it. Then that's extraordinary.
Well, it is,
baffling.
And it happens all the time. But Chris is in the West Midlands and has given me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Chris, you're on not just with me but with Paul and Phil as well. What would you like to say this morning?
Okay, morning to all of you. Now, the organisers of this views these people as martyrs, and they don't understand what they've done to themselves. That is the martyrs.
Do you think these people have been manipulated?
Exactly. There's people being paid, and they're the organisers. What the police should have done was took the phones off them, kept the phones off them, and had them analysed, and then look who they've been phoning, this, that, and the other, and make all the correlation.
You're absolutely right, Chris. I just wonder about the people who were arrested themselves. Do you think they should have been arrested, or do you think they were manipulated by the organisers?
Well, no, they should be arrested because they have committed an offence, and they know it's offence. So they need to understand that actions have consequences.
Okay, Chris.
And they're facing those consequences now because, as I think it was Paul Richards said, they're going to have a criminal record, they'll be on the terrorist watch list, they won't be able to fly out, they won't be able to enter America for a start. That's completely out of bounds, and Australia. So if they got relatives there, they want to go to a wedding or something, we'll get a flight. They suddenly find out
Well, they'll reap the whirlwind, Chris. It's exactly as you say. Phil, final thought on this?
Well, Chris raises a really valid point there, because what he actually highlights is precisely the modus operandi for Hamas and proxies and Iran, is that they use people. They use people as pawns in a massive game of chess. And what they're doing is that they are saying, you can take the brunt. We're seeing this in Gaza. Those who are starving in Gaza are taking the brunt of Hamas's actions. And that's exactly what they do. Those are their tactics. And they use people to say to the rest of the world, feel sorry for these people, it's really sad, look at what's happened. So exactly the same way they'll now utilise this of what happened yesterday and say, look, you're arresting innocent people in the UK who were just supporting a good cause. They're going to have criminal records. They'll spin it to suit their narrative, and that's what they do.
Final thought from Paul before we go to the break?
Well, I think Chris has got it absolutely right. We need to go after the people who are egging them on and organising it behind the scenes and standing to one side as the arrests are being made. They should be arrested too. OK, but thank you to Phil and to Paul. We'll come back with them on the debate desk. You want to get your point across or even speak to the three of us, 0344 499 1000. Plenty still to discuss, including what on earth will go on in Alaska when President Trump and President Putin meet there. Could a third president, President Zelensky, join them? Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Ashley, who sent me a voice note.
Hello, Peter. Ashley from Milford. On these protesters, they know that they are prescribed, whether they like it or don't, and they come out with these signs and then complain about being arrested. You know, the actions of this organisation are abhorrent and intentional, and you know, it can't be stood for. So they need to kind of understand, if there's no rule of law, what have we got here? What's next? I hope they get some tough sentences.
Thank you, Ashley. I agree with every single word. Thank you to Penny in Essex as well, who's texted me at 7222 with the word talk in her text. Good morning, Peter. Good morning, Penny. Arresting all those Palestine Action far-left idiots should all be put on a plane and flown to Palestine, and they can be on the spot and they can get support there. Chris says, good morning, Peter. Isn't it strange how not one of these lefty protesters has ever been in support of what's happened to children or women in this island? Sorry, lefty protests has ever been in support of what's happened to women and children in this island. And that's really interesting and leads us on to our next topic. Margaret in Birmingham, who sent a lovely card this week. Thank you, Margaret, after James Wheel's death. So thank you for that card. Everyone here appreciated that, and all the other cards that everyone has sent in. I really appreciate that. Margaret says, morning, Peter. I agree with Robert Jenrick. We are all concerned about our families. 485 invaders yesterday crossing the channel. Where was Starmer? Nowhere, no speech, but he phoned Zelensky. When is he going to call an emergency? When is he going to have a recall of Parliament, says Margaret in Birmingham. This is an article in the Mail on Sunday today. Robert Jenrick, Shadow Justice Secretary, sitting in that very seat yesterday. He says, I care more for my daughter's safety than the rights of foreign criminals. That's why I support every peaceful protester outside an asylum hotel. And actually on this matter of immigration and migration generally, I did ask Jenrick about this, about digital IDs. Just this little reminder of what he said yesterday. I'll go back to Paul and Phil in a second, but let's just see what Robert Jenrick told me yesterday in this studio.
I'm personally against ID cards, and I don't think that they will make any contribution to stopping illegal migration. Look, if you are an employer who is employing illegal workers, in almost every case you're doing so dishonestly. You know that those people are not workers that you should be taking on. You're already obliged by the law to do checks into their visa and their status here in the UK. The black economy is very important. We've got to clamp down on it. I increased fines for employers who were employing people against the law tenfold when I was a minister. So those car washes, the nail bars, the construction sites, the care homes, the barbers, the places where people are, in some instances, employing workers illegally, they should be being raided. The employers should be being arrested and fined in accordance with the current laws.
Robert Jenrick speaking to me yesterday, and he's gone further today in the Mail on Sunday. This article, I care more for my daughter's safety than the rights of foreign criminals. That's why I support every peaceful protest outside an asylum hotel. Plenty of those going on this weekend. On the matter of deporting foreign criminals, the government says it wants to do that. There is definitely a debate to be had here about whether justice is being served if you deport someone, because they may well be sent to a country that doesn't imprison them at all, or that we don't have a returns agreement with properly. Paul, what do you make of this issue?
Well, first of all, I think I've been in politics for 40 years nearly, and I can recognise a politician on manoeuvres. I think Jenrick is on summer manoeuvres. He's making headlines.
Is he ever not manoeuvre?
He's trying to out Farage, and this kind of inflammatory stuff is part of that. So you have to be a little bit cynical about his announcements in the Mail on Sunday. On the substantive point about returning migrants who've broken the law, I mean, the government is saying very loud and clear they're going to introduce laws so this can happen, so we can free up prison spaces, which is the advantage of this, and get rid of these people from our country as fast as possible. Now, who isn't going to welcome that?
Well, is that the right approach, though? Because I'm just saying there is a debate to be had, because if you have someone serving 30% of their sentence, then they get deported to their home country, they could quite literally almost get off with murder or rape.
That is quite a theoretical sort of argument.
There are lots of countries that are not going to imprison them.
Yeah, but a lot of people would just rather get rid of them.
Yeah, but they serve about 30% of the sentence in this country, and then they're free to walk the streets. As far as I'm concerned, it's better out than in.
And we need the prison places for all these Palestine solidarity people, don't we? Or the Palestine Action people.
So you're happy enough with this policy?
Well, let me put it this way, right? Given half a chance, I've made it no hidden secret. I don't believe that crime and punishment is on a good keel at the moment. So, as far as I'm concerned, I think that punishment is way too soft in this country. And if it were
you want to release people after 30% of their sentences?
No,
to
I don't want
abroad.
to. I don't want to. But I think that there should be much tougher penalties in place as an incentive to stop people carrying out these crimes. Very simply, because I don't want the taxpayers to pay for them. I literally don't.
Those two things don't go together, Phil. Because if you're saying you don't want to pay for people, and you're saying they should be released and sent to,
they do go together. I tell you why. It's because if you've got the tougher penalties in the first place, that acts as an incentive to try and stop this from happening in the first place. That hopefully will reduce the number of people carrying out the crime.
Okay, well that's a further point on that. But the point is, if you convict more people and send them to prison for longer, it costs prisoners in this country, on average, £54,000 a year for every prison place. Yes. And that's before you get into things like young offender centres where you're in 170, 180,000 a year.
No, I know, but I don't want the cost to the taxpayer to be that amount. It's ridiculous. Why should we pay for these people? They're not our problem. They should be gone.
They've committed the crime here. Are you happy for them to go abroad and be free?
Listen, let's put it this way. If they're in another country, they don't pose a threat to people on the streets here.
Okay. Paul,
I tend to agree with that. I mean, 2 points on Jenrick, though. One, he was in government, could have done something about all of this when he was there with the power to do so, didn't. And second of all, he's opposing digital IDs. Now, that's a controversial issue, but that is actually a really important way to identify who's here, who's legal, who's in the black economy. And the Tories are saying no to digital IDs because of this sort of slightly strange, would show us your papers thing that we keep hearing. But actually, we all show our digital ID every time we pick up a vintage parcel. So why shouldn't we have a digital ID?
The problem I have with digital IDs is that...
you see, this is the argument, but why?
Well, I'm about to tell you. It's
on your phone now.
It's not. It's putting it all together. I don't want my doctor seeing how many cans of Diet Coke I drink. I don't want my... I don't want my bank...
How would a digital ID do that?
It puts all the information together. If you have your purchases, if you have your health records, it's the metadata. That's the problem.
The word "if" is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
Phil, what do you think about digital IDs?
Well, I think you could always cut back on the Diet Coke. But no, it's more, for me...
Outrageous suggestion.
No, look, for me, I've always said, I think if someone's got nothing to hide, there's no problem with it. I know that argument doesn't wash very well with a lot of people, people, they say it doesn't matter.
Have you got nothing to hide?
No, I don't have anything to hide.
Okay, give me your phone and tell me the code.
Why?
Because you've nothing to hide, so I can have a look through your phone and see everything in your phone. See your internet history.
Private messages.
Well, yeah, so you do have something to hide.
Not hide, it's private, it's my stuff.
No, but it's something you want to hide. It's something you don't want people to see.
I don't want to hide it, I just don't want you to see it.
Well, that's the same as that's exactly the same as hiding. I always say this to people and they say, I've got nothing to hide. Give me your phone, give me the code, I'll look through every single thing in your phone, I'll see how much money you have in your bank account, I'll see all the messages you've sent.
But why is digital ID going to do any of those things? If you want to see Phil's WhatsApps, that's not what digital ID reveals. It's just a way of saying who we are, you know, what our employment status is. Do we have a right to be here? Do we have criminal convictions? And that's a sort of simple way of doing it.
I think, to be fair, there is an argument to be said, like, what does this digital ID actually expose about you? Well, now, that is a fair enough discussion to be had. And if it's going to...
what would it actually be? Because we're debating something we don't actually know what
we don't know what form this is going to take. But if this is just going to simply going to confirm that someone has legal status to be in the UK, if it confirms that someone doesn't have any criminal convictions, if it simply confirms that someone is paying tax, NI, whatever it might be, then I'm in favour of that. I'm not in favour of people using it, government in particular, using it as an excuse to root through personal information that is absolutely none of their blooming business.
Like they can do that already anyway.
But I was going to say, that already exists. If people want to remain truly private, don't have a smartphone. Do you know what I mean? Don't go on the internet. You're doomed. If you don't like that way of life... Totally. That is the only way to do it. Exactly the same way. What on earth do people think contactless payment is? It's a monitoring system. That's literally all it does. So if you want to be off-grid...
Well, it helps you pay more easily than putting in your code. I mean, there is another purpose
That is the guise it takes, but it is ultimately a way of monitoring what you do. It's exactly the same way that when again, sorry to bring it back to London, but I've lived in London most of my life, so it's all I really know, but exactly the same way when the Oyster card system was first introduced. Those outside of London don't know, Oyster card is a top-up card that you could use to tap in, tap out at the underground.
Well, they have it in various towns and cities.
Yeah, absolutely, but what I mean is that I don't think they call it Oyster. So
sure.
So, but when the Oyster card system was introduced into London, people said, "Oh, this is amazing! It's so quick. I don't have to buy a ticket." Yeah, no, you don't have to buy a ticket, but they are tracking you. That's exactly what's happening. It's happened all along.
Just to say, Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, says good news for Waterlooville. That's where one of the a series of protests have been all peaceful so far. I think there. Thank you to the 10,000 plus people who signed my petition, says Suella Braverman, objecting to these migrant hotel plans. Very pleased that the Home Office has listened to local people and local Conservative councillors and dropped plans to put illegal migrants and asylum seekers in the heart of Waterlooville. So that is a movement there.
Well, hang on, don't forget the government is closing these hotels down. She's going to try and get Conservative
people into homes of multiple occupancy.
You want to close the hotels, the government's closing the hotels.
Yeah, but they're also putting them into...
the demand was close the hotels, the government's doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure a lack of social housing as the net result of that is something people are necessarily going to welcome. Listen, we will return to this topic. Plenty to debate on the debate desk. It is a debate, and it's not just the three of us. I want your thoughts too. 0344 499 1000. We'll take a quick break while I check out Phil Dave's internet history. Stay with us.
And the French have also got power over whether we send anybody back, because they can refuse to accept the people that we want to send back. And in any event, if we do send them back, they will send us somebody in return. So
yeah, that's all very interesting, Mike. But I mean, I don't know what your alternative is.
Well, I've told you what my alternative is before.
What?
I've told you my alternative before. It's just
Well, what's your
deport people.
alternative?
Deport them back to the countries of where they came from. That's what you do.
What if you can't? What if they won't? What if those countries?
Well, you look at what Donald Trump did.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Terry, who says, morning Peter, as long as foreign criminals are not in this country, I don't really care where they go. Prison in this country is ineffective anyway, so just remove them if we don't have a returns agreement. Just put the crooks on a plane and let them worry about entry, says Terry Valentine there. Another person says, just reintroduce conscription to stop illegal immigrants and get rid of existing young men. Do you really? I'm not sure. I believe conscription works. Most people in the military don't believe it works either. Jane says, it seems while the lefty protesters based themselves in London yesterday, other protests mostly went off peacefully. So can someone explain who are this so-called far right? Penny in Essex says, Lucy Connolly was stupid to put out that tweet that she did, but she was made an example of, given that sentence was ludicrous. There are known paedophiles who aren't even in prison, and we know who they are, and very dangerous too. Hugh Edwards didn't go to prison, got a suspended sentence. There is nothing right or normal about this country now, a country where I was proud to be English. I'm not now. We are a laughingstock, says Penny. And Peter in North Somerset says, good morning, Peter. The solution for dealing with people who participated in that shameful demonstration yesterday is to round up the ringleaders and process them as terrorists and hand out hefty prison sentences to act as a deterrent to others. The government has done with this with the participants in the riots last year. Surely they can do it again. Lots to discuss. I also now actually want to go back to the debate desk with the broadcaster Phil Dave and the former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards to talk a bit about what is going to happen this week on Friday actually in Alaska. Now, my unpopular view is that I think Trump is doing the right thing and that he's actually talking about peace. He's talking about the end of Ukraine. Biden didn't do that. Paul, what's your take on this?
Well, I think my fear is that he's going to give Putin, who's played him like a violin, by the way, for the last 3 years, a propaganda coup by saying that they have to trade peace for land and that the Russian invasion will prosper in some way by territorial gains being handed to Russia as part of a peace deal. Now, the only peace comes if the Russian forces leave the territory they occupied and the Ukrainians get sovereignty back. Anything less than that is appeasement. And we know what happens when you appease dictators. They just come back for more a year later and keep on going. So I think he's a man who is in physical and mental decline. He's desperate for his peace prize before Vance gets rid of him before the next elections.
What's your evidence that he's in mental decline?
Well, because I think some of the things he says, he thought that Spain was in BRICS, and he says things which suggest that he hasn't really thought things through, and that his
but that doesn't mean mental decline. Surely, I'm not being funny. There are plenty of people who say stuff without thinking.
I think if you look linguistically, the way he speaks compared to say 5 years ago.
I mean, you're not a mental health expert, Paul.
No, I'm not. But I think there's plenty of people that would suggest that his anyway.
Okay, but I was in the absence of a psychologist to be able to verify. Can I just ask in all seriousness?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from, that it's not a good outcome to obviously start going to hand back bits of land to Russia, because that's ultimately what they're trying to do out of this.
Yeah.
But in the same way that there are people who say that, for example, sort of recognising a state of Palestine is the way to get peace in the Middle East. Could it be that there has to be some sort of middle ground here? I personally don't think Russia should be handed any land back. That's just my belief. But at the same time, the Russian army is very strong. And realistically, without NATO forces getting involved, how is it possible to back them into the corner and say, right, you get out of Ukraine, you're not going to do this, and there is no
I
room
think
for
the
negotiation.
great lesson of this war is that the Russian army is not strong. They thought this would all be rolled up within a few weeks, and the Red Army would just pile into Kiev, and that would be all over in like they invaded.
What's been proven is that Ukraine is stronger than Russia gave them credit for, but it doesn't mean Russian army isn't strong.
And even by using all those poor conscripts, putting in the North Koreans and so on, and yet the Ukrainians have held their ground. So why should that be allowed to prosper now?
But what that proves is Ukraine is stronger than they thought, but it doesn't mean that the Russian army isn't strong, and this is my point. So there is nothing to suggest that if we don't sort of start trying to find some sort of middle ground, that there's ever going to be an end to this.
But a middle ground, you say middle ground, I say appeasement, and we know that never prospers.
Okay, I want to ask about a couple more stories. One is the social media story about social media giants facing fines for overzealous free speech crackdown. Ministers have told platforms including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok they must not restrict access to posts that express lawfully held views. There do seem to be quite a number of things, including actually a speech by a Conservative MP, Katie Lamb, on rape gangs that have been censored by places like Twitter. Phil, obviously, I was only joking about looking into your internet history, but clearly the Online Safety Act, even legitimate things, and I'm not speculating on what may or may not be in your internet history, even very legitimate things like Katie Lamb's speech have been censored here. What do you make of this story?
It's tricky because I would say that obviously I'm all in favour of free speech, but unfortunately I don't really think at any step of the way have any realistic boundaries been set as to what that means. And if there have been, they certainly haven't been enforced properly and indeed told to the users of social media where those boundaries lie. The problem you've got is that it seems to be that whoever makes the loudest noise about something that possibly for political reasons someone doesn't agree with, that's what is treated as being curbed as free speech.
And often these social media platforms, Paul, are just really, they don't want to be fined, so they're going to actually be quite conservative with a small say in this.
I think, well, it's two things. One is it's a great example of the legislation being behind the technology. So
it always will be.
Parliament is trying to catch up with a revolution.
It'll never catch up.
Absolutely. So, politicians are looking at each other, trying to use the words they don't understand and concepts they don't grasp and technology they don't use to make law. But the second is that, it's not beyond our wit, surely, to have a space online where people are lawful and can say things within the confines of free speech, which is never absolute, by the way. We don't have absolute free speech to say whatever we like, either here or online.
Well, it's a classic example of somebody goes into a
crowded theatre.
A crowded theatre and shouts fire. Yeah,
right, and that's the classic conundrum.
Yeah.
And the internet should not be an ungoverned space where I can call anybody a thing I want and just say whatever I like about anybody.
Laws and all the rest.
Yeah. So we should be able to construct a system of law that allows that. And my fear with this is that they're now overcompensating. So they are taking things down with which I would disagree, but someone has a right to say.
But there is quite a very simple foundation that we could use here, right? We know roughly what can and can't be said if someone was going to say it to your face, right? Not yours, but one's face, right? If we use that as a good starting point, I would actually say social media would be a far happier place.
Yeah. Well, I had a boss back in the day at the BBC who said never put something on Twitter you wouldn't broadcast, which is a very, very good line when I was working for them. Paul, you've been taken to task by Jason in the Lake District, who says your claims that Robert Jenrick is saying inflammatory statements. What is inflammatory about what he said? Speaking the truth and standing up for concerned local people is common sense. It wasn't inflammatory. What a ridiculous comment. That kind of language was labelled at us with the rape gangs. What do you make of Jason's comment?
Well, I stand by what I said, and I also remind Jason that this is about the politics of getting rid of Kemi Badenoch. It's nothing to do with rape gangs or anything else. It's about Jenrick trying to become leader.
Really? You don't think he cares about that at all?
I think he wants to be
very cynical comment.
I think he wants to be leader of the Conservative Party, and he
Can't he do both?
And he thinks this is the way to do it.
Can't he do both?
Don't you just think it's a sign that actually maybe Reform's stance on politics is actually having an effect, because now they're starting to see that people are reacting a bit better to that and maybe starting to think, oh, OK, I need to change the direction of travel here.
That might well be part of his calculus, but the end goal is to get rid of Kemi Badenoch.
OK.
Wow.
Thank you both very much indeed, Phil, the broadcaster Phil Dave, and the former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. Great to see you both. Stephen Bournemouth says we run a risk of foreign criminals coming to the UK, committing crimes, knowing they will only be sent home. It effectively gives them a free pass to commit crime without punishment. Steve, that is a really good point, and one we perhaps should have got into, and maybe will actually later in the programme. Martin in Hill Wolseley says, I cannot agree with you about the subject of the Palestinian flag. It should not be flown on the streets of Britain because it incites violence. Martin, I disagree with you on that. Listen, you know I am not pro-Palestinian by any stretch of the imagination. I'm pro the Palestinian people. I'm not pro-Hamas by any stretch of the imagination at all. I want peace in the Palestinian territories. I quite like a two-state solution. I quite like them to live in a democracy. Crazy ideas. I don't expect it'll ever happen. But the Palestinian flag itself, not nice, doesn't represent nice things. Wouldn't fly it myself, wouldn't encourage people to fly it, but someone flying it should not be arrested. That is not something that people should be arrested for. Ian says the protesters knew exactly what they were doing, but they put the lives of Gazans dying above their own. Why are you spouting your pro-Israeli nonsense when it's the Prime Minister who's wanted for war crimes, says Ian. Ian, there's just so much that's wrong with that. There's just so many factual points that are wrong with that message. I'm actually going to keep the message on my screen and I'm going to deal with that on the other side of the news because we're going to run out of time for the news. But I promise you, Ian, I'll come back and if you stay tuned, I will tell you why you're completely wrong. Lots to talk about after the news. Amar Joe Hill is standing by, the lawyer of the Prosperity Institute, who went down so well last weekend that we've invited him back to talk about the foreign deportation of foreign criminals. So stay with us here on Talk.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Labour says foreign criminals will face immediate deportation. We've also seen Palestine Action supporters, hundreds of them, literally about over 400 of them, have been arrested. They've been lifted. They've been bailed, many of them. We'll talk about that. We'll talk as well about Ukraine and what happens in regard to Israel too. There's loads of stories around today. I want your thoughts on all of them here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can also send me a voice note. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. That's the number Ian has sent his WhatsApp note in on, and I will tell him why he's completely wrong in just a second. So lots to look forward to. We'll also hear from Amar Johal, the lawyer at the Prosperity Institute, who was so popular last week. We've invited him on again to tell us about foreign criminals and what will actually happen in regard to the migration situation. So plenty to discuss here on Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Lovely to have your company this Sunday morning. Let's get cracking. Well, Ian, let me tell you why you're wrong. The protesters knew exactly what they were doing, and they put the lives of Gaza's dying above their own. Well, if you want to put the Gaza's dying people above their own, you can go on a protest march and say, support the Palestinian cause, support the Palestinians who are dying in Gaza. I support them. I want them not to die. I want them to have enough food. I want them to live a free life, preferably in a democracy, in a two-state solution there. So you can absolutely support them without getting arrested by supporting Palestine Action. That is not what Palestine Action do. They would say they support the lives of Gaza's dying, but actually what they do is sabotage, is criminal damage. One Palestine Action supporter allegedly hit a security guard with a hammer, for example, when they were sabotaging a piece of equipment. So this is something that I think we need to be informed about, we need to know the facts on, and Ian, it is perfectly possible to support the Palestinian cause, which is a perfectly legitimate thing to do. As long as you're not supporting terrorism, that's fine with me. I disagree with it myself. You're talking about spouting my pro-Israeli nonsense. Its PM is wanted for war crimes. At what point have I defended Benjamin Netanyahu this morning? At what point have I said that his plan in regard to taking over all of Gaza and Gaza City is a good one? We know as well that the head of the army in Israel is against that, as are many thousands of people, including members of the hostages' families, for example. We'll talk actually a little bit later on to an expert on these matters, who is a former national security advisor to Netanyahu, Yaakov Amidror. And if you have any questions for him that you think I should ask, feel free to send them in. But Ian, I completely disagree with your message, but thank you for sending it nonetheless. You're entitled to your free speech, as am I. And Martin in Chippenham says these so-called protesters have only been arrested. How many will be released without charge or a minimum of a caution? I'm guessing there will be very few that actually appear before the courts. If they do, they will probably be bound over to keep the peace. So this has been done to appease some people. It is so transparent, says Martin in Chippenham. Well, let's see what happens. I'd be very surprised if any of them actually go to jail. We will see. There have been protests, of course, from Palestine Action. There have also been many protests in regard to migrant hotels. And this is something that we talked about on the debate desk a few minutes ago. We disagreed on this matter. Paul Richards and Phil Dave and I had a bit of a chat about it. This is what we said.
Yeah, the government is closing these hotels down. She's trying to get concerned.
Moving them into houses of multiple occupancy.
You want to close the hotels, the government's closing the hotels.
Yeah, but they're also putting them into...
The demand was close the hotels, the government's doing it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure a lack of social housing as the net result of that is something people are necessarily going to welcome. So those migrant hotels, the government says they want them to close all of them by 2029. Certainly what seems to be happening in Waterlooville, according to the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, is that 10,000 people have signed her petition objecting to migrant hotel plans. And the Home Office, she says, now has listened to local people and local Conservative councillors and dropped plans to put illegal migrants and asylum seekers in the heart of Waterlooville. Well, we know that George Madgwick, the councillor for Reform UK, has been very active on this as well. So it's not just the Conservatives, it must be said. There's a big story around today as well about Labour saying that it wants foreign criminals to face immediate deportation. As always, we probe these things. We say, actually, if this happens, great, fabulous, marvellous, but is it actually going to happen? Is it possible within the law? Is this policy just hot air? Amar Johal is the lawyer at the Prosperity Institute. Amar was incredibly popular last week, so we've got him back this week to talk about this. Amar, you're very welcome to the programme. Just firstly on migrant hotels and that issue of migrant hotels. I mean, the fact is it not, that if the hotels close, we've seen already that people have moved into houses of multiple occupancy. It's put yet more pressure on a creaking social housing system as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, spot on, Peter, that it's just moving the problem around. So it's moving from a very visible focal point for asylum seekers, to HMOs, an attempt to disperse people within the community and therefore hope people don't notice. And the more affluent parts of the country tend to mobilize better against both hotels and Home Office's dispersal policy. Sorry, Peter.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. I just wonder, Michelle Braverman is saying that these protests are actually having an effect here. I wonder legislatively if you think that there will be an effect here, that these protests are actually being listened to in the way that Michelle Braverman says that her petition is being listened to.
Yeah, there is a sort of range of options that the government has to address the perceived generosity about support for asylum seekers. Some are legislative, some are Home Office decisions. It's an interpretation of a requirement to put people in 3- or 4-star hotels, and I'm sure the government could listen to voices like Suella Braverman quite easily. It's a question of political will, I think, not the law.
So much of it is about political will, as we were discussing last week, Amar. I just wonder, in regard to this poster that Labour have put out in the last hour or so, there's a big plane on it, there's a police car, and they're saying, I think we can see it perhaps on the screen, with Labour, foreign criminals will face immediate deportation. That is a stark message. We've seen the footage, some of the footage that's on the screen at the moment, of those people arriving for their so-called one-in, one-out scheme. Will any of this work, Amar? Because there are so many people who are saying, well, actually, once it gets to the human rights considerations here, and even before then, there are many flaws in this plan. What do you think from your legal perspective?
Yeah, it's important to take a step back and understand two bits of the context. One, as you've mentioned, Peter, is the desire for Labour to capture the narrative around asylum and illegal immigration. And the second is a drastic shortage of prison places in England, of which foreign national offenders make up roughly 12% of the population. And Labour had previously announced some action on this, which was that prisoners would be liable to deportation having served 30% of their sentence, custodial sentence, down from 50%. And now they're effectively proposing to reduce that to no time served and you're liable for deportation. The big flaw in the plan, and a real fundamental misconception with how prisoner deportations work in this country, is people assume that those who are liable to deportation, who the law says should be deported, and a prisoner governor has agreed to that, very, very frequently don't get deported. They will go into immigration detention for some period, and then when the various exceptions to the rules around automatic deportation, around their human rights, or about under the Refugee Convention, whilst those are being heard, and that may go on for a very long time, they're frequently released back into the community. So there's actually around, last time I think statistics were released on this was for 2023, there's actually around 12,000 foreign nationals liable to deportation who are living in the community. And that's roughly equivalent to the population of foreign nationals in England's prisons. So it's another question of talking tough, but does the rhetoric actually match the action? Generally not.
I wonder, from your perspective, not just legally, but your personal opinion as well on all of this. I have a problem with foreign criminals being deported, because even if they are, I just wonder, it's maybe not a problem, it's just a question, I suppose, about whether justice is served. Now, in an ideal world, there wouldn't be any foreign criminals in our prisons. We wouldn't be paying £54,000 per prison place. Our prisons are full to bursting. We should get rid of them. However, if they go to a home country, if that actually is successful, and as you've outlined very eloquently there, it often isn't, but if they go to a foreign country, what is the law around whether they have to go into a prison there? Will they just be released completely? I'm just thinking about the long process of getting criminals convicted, then going to prison, them serving 30% of their sentences here, and then being deported. Will they serve any time? Actually, will they serve a sentence, especially if the crime they commit here perhaps is different in law to the country they're from?
It's a very astute point, Peter. So what Labour are talking about is the early release scheme, which is different from the prisoner transfer scheme. That is where a prisoner will go back to their home country and serve the remainder of their sentence under that country's laws. Here, we're talking about they will go back to their country, and in most cases, if they even do go back to their country, they will not complete their prison sentence. So there is a fundamental question of whether we're letting down victims where even with 30 or 50% of their sentence, someone facing removal overseas, being deported, and then not serving their sentence. I think 0% of that sentence is pretty damn egregious for victims. And then in a lot of cases, so we discussed that the UK is not able to remove people in some circumstances. A lot of cases, people will come straight back because of general porous nature, sadly.
Well, totally. And this is my point. I mean, if you, God forbid, if someone who happens to be a foreigner, God forbid, killed someone who's close to you, someone in your family, and you work through the courts, you get them convicted, they get a life sentence, and then you say, well, actually, they're a foreign prisoner, so they're going to be deported to their home country, and then they're just free. They're just okay, they're in a different country, but they're free. I mean, I would want that person to spend time in prison. I wouldn't worry about the costs of that. I'd want justice. And I suppose the question, what is the justice of this situation is something that I think victims will think about a lot. Some people will just say, get rid of them, get them out of the country. If they're not, as Phil Dave said earlier on, they're not here, they can't harm us. And I get that argument, I understand that argument, but in terms of justice being served, to me it's important they serve time behind bars, whether it's here or somewhere else.
Yeah, that sentiment's spot on, Peter. A small caveat would be the most serious offenders shouldn't be able to use either of these schemes to get secure early release or serve their sentences abroad. We're talking about more, all crime is bad, but less serious.
Sure, of course, yeah, exactly. I just wonder, in regard to the measures that have been taken this week, in regard to the one in, one out policy. I mean, we've seen lots of tough talk from Yvette Cooper, we've seen the people coming to Marston and so on. I mean, realistically, how many of those people do you see being deported to France?
Very few, and that is why the government has been very cagey with promising numbers. They're just hoping to have some sort of precedent set, some sort of deterrent cut through with the public. But you can notice they're not promising specific numbers, because I suspect once you go through all the different caveats in the scheme and the preconditions the French have set and our domestic difficulties around deportation, the numbers will be very low. The Home Secretary already has very wide powers to detain people who are in the country illegally. Generally, you don't use those because capacity is quite small in the immigration detention system, and there is a lot of appeal time generally.
Amar, thank you. I've learned a lot, as I always do, from you. And one other thing I've learned today is that you do occasionally not wear a tie, which has been a big revelation today. So thank you for that. That's Amar Johal there, who is a lawyer with the Prosperity Institute, giving us all the detail on all of that. We talked a little bit about Suella Braverman, talking there about her tweet. She says, good news for Waterlooville. This is in Portsmouth. Thank you to the 10,000 plus people who signed my petition, Suella Braverman's petition, objecting to these migrant hotel plans. Very pleased the Home Office has listened to local people and local Conservative councillors and dropped plans to put illegal migrants and asylum seekers in the heart of Waterlooville. Well, Dean lives there. He's from Portsmouth. Dean, you're very welcome to the programme. I know we've talked before on this matter. Tell me your thoughts on what Suella Braverman is saying, Dean.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
Sure.
I just thought I'd find out. I feel very passionately about this. I suffer with CPTSD and a few other mental health issues. I have a real good perception of how dishonest or misleading that politicians can be. I'm not afraid to call out injustice, but what I do see is a lot of to and fro between Suella herself and Councillor Phil Monday, and what I do see is a lot of gaslighting from both sides. Suella is very passionate, but I believe that she's having a wall pulled over her eyes because Councillor Phil Murray has...
Okay, well, we just want to be careful about what we say about people legally, but what do you believe this councillor... I don't know this councillor, but what do you think he's doing? Which party is he from, Dean?
He's a Labour councillor, Phil Monday. He's in charge of Harrop Borough Council.
Okay, and what do you believe he's doing?
I believe that he's pulling the wool over the public's eyes in Waterlooville due to the fact that they don't want immigrants housed in these new properties that have just been refurbished above Waterlooville town centre shops.
I'm sure that councillor would deny that, Dean. I just want to keep us all on the right side of the law here in terms of accusations and so on.
Okay.
I just wonder, do you think a solution will be found here, or do you think this is just posturing?
No, Peter, they're kicking the can down the road. It's still, you know, they won't allow them in those properties, but they'll find other vacant properties in the area and they'll drip feed them in just like they do everywhere else. So the local people do not see the infiltration of these illegal immigrants that are coming in and being housed. So it just seems to be a hell of a lot of gaslighting, telling the people what they want to hear, while behind the scenes they run around and try and fix the problem. Okay, we can't have them in that area, so what we'll do is we'll put them in a different area where it's not going to be so blatant and upfront. So, and that's all they're doing. It will still be on the taxpayers' money. They want to get rid of people from the hotels. Brilliant. So what they will do...
Yeah, where do they go now? That's the question, Dean, isn't it? Because people say we want them out of the hotels, but what's next? And for councils like that, they'll be looking at social housing, won't they? They'll just say, we're already under a huge amount of social housing pressure. Where do they go?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've lived in Waterlooville for my whole 50 years. And I know the people of Waterlooville, and we have had enough. The police, in the last protest, it was a wonderful protest. It was very peaceful. And that was because the police must have realised if we bring in counter-protesters, the people of Waterlooville will have no problem at all with escalating the issue.
Well, listen, and I'm really glad. I'm really glad they haven't done that, Dean. And I know people like you have been on a number of protests in Waterlooville. As far as I can see, has there been a single arrest? I think they've all been peaceful, haven't they?
They've all been peaceful. There's another one planned for the 13th.
Okay.
And this one was planned to be a hell of a lot bigger than the last one.
Okay, well, let's hope. Obviously, I mean, Dean, you've made your point brilliantly there. We've seen the people of Waterlooville making their point. Let's hope this gets sorted, and let's hope all those protests, of course, remain completely peaceful. Dean, thanks for your call. Really appreciate that. And we'll take more calls, of course, in just a minute here on Talk. Stay with us.
Whether it would help, an ID card would help control the illegal working of asylum seekers, but actually we couldn't see why it would help. So for lots of reasons, but fundamentally the fact that we don't trust this government, do we, to have any more information about our lives. And just one more point to mention as well, the recent online safety bill debate also has made us, because that's a complete smokescreen for controlling free speech.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Max is in Eastbourne and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Max, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
I just wanted to point out that earlier, when those things were advocating digital ID, you failed to make the point that millions of people, not only in this country but elsewhere, reject such things as Oyster cards, contactless payments, so far as it is possible, which is more than most people might be aware, and GPS and smartphones because of their intrusive capability, and they also resent people trying to deny them services for having rejected these technologies.
Well, I think that's a very fair point. I think that's one that should be made. I'm glad to have it as part of the debate. Is that something you do yourself, Max?
Yes. The phone I'm handing now is an old-fashioned actual phone that doesn't do anything else.
Right. Does it even send a text message, or is it an actual landline? Max, can you hear me?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of that.
Oh, I was wondering if if the phone you're ringing me on is what is sometimes known as a dumb phone, so it sends text messages, but it doesn't do internet and WhatsApp and things like that.
It doesn't even send text messages, the thing that I'm holding now.
Right. So it's a landline phone, is it?
Yes.
So you don't have a mobile phone at all then, Max?
No.
Okay, yeah, I have a friend who is in a similar position. You must have a lot of pressure to get one. There must be a lot of people who just assume that you have one because so many people do. Is it easy to live the life you do, to reject this technology? Max, are you there? Can you hear me?
The line keeps cutting out, but I'm not missing out on anything that a person really needs.
Sure.
I have the advantage of not living in London. Admit it's easier to get public transport. And use cash as one should.
Do you feel that's being eroded, Max?
Well, of course it is, but only because the actual uncompromised, autonomous individual human population is not taking strident enough action against it.
Okay. Max, thanks for those points. Really interesting to talk to you. Shame about the connection on the phone. I won't be advocating he gets a smartphone. Duke in Harrogate. Is your name actually Duke?
No, that's my surname.
Oh, it's your surname. Are you going to tell us your first name, or will you just?
It's something else. I was nicknamed in the army, so.
Okay. I thought we might have a member of the aristocracy on the line, but
doubt it very much. I'm just down with Yorkshireman.
Okay, that'll do. What's your point today, Duke? What point would you like to make?
I've had a crazy idea. We're on about this digital ID and things. So we get these people landing in small boats that end up on a beach. Why can't we? It might sound stupid, but like we have our pets, have them tagged with a little dink. Off you go from a chip, a microchip. Then we send them back. We send the one back, and we get the 17 in. And that might act as a deterrent.
Surely they would cite. I mean, I don't think that's the worst idea I've ever heard, Duke, as long as they don't want me to get one. But I suppose the point is that there are so many people who would say that's a infringement of their human rights and all the rest of it. But we do have to keep track of these people.
Yeah, but the thing is, ID cards. I've had ID card in the army for 11 years, 24/7. You had it, end off. If you didn't have it, you ended up tapping the boards in front of the OC on a Monday morning and get a fine. There you go.
So ID isn't a big thing for you at all. You think we should just get on with it?
Digital is, but if they want to impose digital, then go with this, microchip for these people landing.
Interesting thoughts there, Duke. Thanks for that. I appreciate you giving us a call on 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk now to Aaron. Is with us, Aaron Kneebone, who is a former Royal Marine Commando. And Aaron, you had a very interesting experience this week, which at one point involved Rupert Lowe, a man I expect you haven't met and perhaps we're not even that familiar with. Just talk us through what happened. And you're actually on the vessel he spotted at the moment, if I understand correctly.
Yes, thanks for having me, Peter. Yeah, I'm on the vessel now. We're still only about 6 miles off the Norfolk coast, so we haven't made it too far since passing Rupert.
So what are you doing? Why are you on the boat?
So yeah, we are doing a charity row. We're doing 4 rows in 4 years, and the first row is from Land's End. It was going to be John O'Groats, but we're now going to finish in Edinburgh because of the weather. We're not going to quite make it to John O'Groats, but next year we'll start again at Land's End and finish in Edinburgh. So over the next 2 years, we would have circumnavigated Great Britain.
So you are on a charity row, but I'm sure you're doing great things for the motor neurone disease charity. Tell us what happened a few days ago.
Yeah, so we were rowing up the Norfolk coast, just off Great Yarmouth, and the sea state was quite rough. So we decided to come more inland. We've stayed quite far off the coast recently, but we came more inland, and we had a VHF radio call from the Coast Guard asking us if we had seen any orange dinghies within our vicinity, because they could see on our tracker where we were, and we were the closest boat.
Okay, so they were thinking about perhaps migrants.
Yes. Well, we're not sure if it was migrants or someone was on an orange dinghy and got blown offshore.
Quite lost.
Yeah, so we had a look around and we hadn't seen anything for a few hours, any other boats. So we responded saying we haven't, but the front of our boat is painted in an orange wave. They might be getting confused with our boat. So they asked us to wave on shore because there was a group gathering of people on shore. And I'm guessing the Coast Guard were in communications with whoever was on shore. So we waved on shore, and then we carried on thinking nothing of it. That they know we're genuine people, so we carried on. And then a few hours later, the gathering of people followed. We weren't rowing very fast, unfortunately. So the people on the beach followed us along the beach, and we could see them walking along with us. And then the Coast Guard contacted us again to say, and by this time we had seen the Instagram post.
So this was an Instagram post by Rupert Lowe, by the MP. Yes. Rupert Lowe? And what was he saying in that Instagram post?
It said, migrants landed in Great Yarmouth now. I'm giving chase, and I'll do everything in my power to deport. I can't remember the exact wording.
Sure,
but
okay, yeah.
Along the lines
he was under the impression that you were a group of migrants who were going to be landing in his constituency.
Yes.
The slight issue with that, of course, is that you're not. You're on a charity rowing boat.
Yes. So we found it quite amusing, to be honest, on the boat. One of my friends sent it to me because we hadn't seen it, and he sent it to me, and it would blow up and go viral. But actually, at the time, we didn't know who Rupert Lowe was, or it.
Oh, we
just thought it was.
We're just slightly losing the connection, Aaron. But I think okay. maybe got you back. I mean, funny, yeah. Weird. And did you come to shore? Did you actually meet Rupert Lowe, or what happened?
No, we carried on. I think the Coast Guard were hinting for us to come ashore. The police were on the beach by this point. We could see the flashing lights from the police cars, and the police wanted the Coast Guard to send the boat out to us. But because we had spoken to the Coast Guard and they knew we were genuine, we'd given them our website and our tracker to say where we were. They really didn't want to waste their resources coming out knowing that we were genuine.
Yeah, of course.
So
of course.
They asked our intention, and we said our intention is to keep rowing. We're not coming on land. This boat isn't designed to land on beaches.
Yes.
So unless there's a pontoon, we can't really land it on the beach.
So what have the last few days been like for you? Because you had Rupert Lowe saying, dinghies coming into Great Yarmouth right now, authorities alerted, I am urgently chasing. If these are illegal migrants, I'll be using every tool at my disposal to ensure these individuals are deported. Enough is enough. Britain needs mass deportation now. But he'd got it wrong.
Yeah, and for us, it's been amazing. It's brought a lot of attention to our campaign and a lot of donations. All of this, which we're building for 4 years. This was a 4-year campaign. This year was meant to be the start of the campaign, building momentum, and it's really helped us with that. and we've all said it's got us through some hard rowing times.
Sure.
Whatever people's political stances are on all of it.
I'm not going to draw you. I'm not going to draw you on the politics, Aaron. I'm not asking you what your politics are. But what would your message be to Rupert Lowe if he's watching?
Thank you very much for your donation. He donated £1,000 to our campaign. So thank you very much, Rupert, and thank you for bringing attention to our campaign.
That's a politician's answer if ever there was one, Aaron. Tell me, why are you rowing for motor neurone disease, and how can people support you if they want to?
Yeah, so Mike and Matt have a really personal reason for it. Matt had a family friend pass away from motor neurone disease, and the more we spoke about it, we're really convinced and all aligned with the mission, and all of the funds we're raising is going into, which is the most important thing for us. We've got a very ambitious goal, but we believe within 4 years we can get to that goal. And the rowing is just a way of getting people on side and bringing in the public. We've all three of us on the boat have done ocean rows before, so I've rowed the Atlantic twice, Mike's rowed the Atlantic, and Liz has rowed the Atlantic and Pacific. So it's something we know, and yeah, it's a bit different coastal rowing. It's actually a lot harder, believe it or not. People think rowing around Britain is a piece of cake compared to rowing across the whole ocean, but the currents and tides and a lot of headwinds have made it really hard, actually. And it's more getting stopping and starting, which is the hard part. But yeah, we're on Instagram, row for MMD, row and a number 4 MMD. And our website is www.rowformnd.com. And it will tell you all about our 4 rows in the next 4 years, which is round Britain, Pacific Ocean, and then the North Atlantic, finishing in 2028.
Good stuff. We'll keep at it, and good for keeping a smile on your face with all of the craziness, I'm sure, of unexpected craziness over the last few days. That's Aaron Kneebone there. He's a former Royal Marine Commando. He's doing a charity row, and by mistake, Rupert Lowe, the MP, thought that their boat was a dinghy coming into Great Yarmouth. It wasn't. And instead it was their charity row. So a few people think it's a funny old story. It is a strange story, certainly. I don't think Rupert Lowe's done anything wrong necessarily. He was representing his constituents, and good for him for giving them £1,000. I think that is quite a nice end to the story as well. Plenty more to discuss. We'll take your calls as well after the break here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Simon Roberts on Twitter has a decent point. He says, when the ID card is introduced, migrants will face tough choices. What's my name? How old am I? Where am I from? The ID card offers a chance to erase their past. How can it be the answer? Thank you also to Lizzie, who says, hi Peter, thanks for having the amazing Amar Johal back. More please. I wanted to pose a question regarding prison overcrowding. Would it be less costly to tag more offenders rather than fork out for their accommodation, etc.? That's Lizzie in Telford. He says he's an even bigger fan than last week, which is great. Delighted to hear hear that. Lizzie, next time Amar Joel is on, I will try to remember to ask him that. We will become a frequent guest on this programme because he knows so much, and you guys love him as well. Morning Peter says, Tad, just to casually let something happen, as is the inexorable rise of immigration, knowing full well it will ultimately have a detrimental effect upon the British economy and quality of life. That is acquiescence and is therefore guilt on the part of the state. So it could be argued that successive governments are criminally responsible for this mess and aren't fit to represent us, says Tad. Thank you for your comment there. Let's go on digital IDs to Jackie in Oldham. Jackie, it's a wee while since we've had a chat. It's good to have you back on the station. What would you like to say this morning?
Good morning, Peter.
Hi there.
Digital ID. There's a few reasons why it's not a good idea. Number one, Tony Blair pushes it.
Good point. Very good point.
He's been pushing it for years.
Very good point.
We should avoid it like the plague.
Excellent point.
Number two, the government has a very bad track record with our data. We only have to look at Afghanistan and the interpreters. We only have to look at the NHS, where we've had data breaches. So I am not comfortable with my personal information being in a central database under the government. Number three, we have no backup. If everything is digital and that system gets hacked or whatever, things come to a full stop. And we've seen this with the NHS, whereby they have electronic records, the system has gone down and they've not been able to sort out appointments, they've not been able to get people's medical records, and it's been absolutely chaos. Number four is the civil liberties part of it, and funnily enough, Big Brother Watch have done an investigation and have just discovered that passport photos have been put in a central bank and are being used by the police for facial recognition.
Interesting. Okay.
And they are taking out legal action against the government. So it's about trust.
Okay.
So there is a lot of reasons.
Is facial recognition something you're worried about as well? I mean, they can get it wrong with facial recognition, but also there are many people like Mike Neville, for example, the police guest we have on here, who really wants it to be used. He thinks it can actually solve loads of crimes and track down lots of perpetrators.
But we said that about CCTV, didn't we?
Although it's something slightly different, but I know exactly what you mean. It is
slightly different, but without our consent, they have overreached and used the using passport.
And that's another brilliant, Jackie, you're making superb points this morning, and as you always do, but particularly on this point, and you're saying that, you know, we can't guarantee it, and there's so many people. What you've got to do when these sorts of things are established is you've got to think of the worst case scenario at all times.
Yeah.
You've got to think, how could this be abused? How could it go wrong? What is the worst case scenario here? And then work your way backwards. Hopefully it'll all be fine. Hopefully it'll work out marvellously with like every government policy. But there is the law of unintended consequences, isn't there?
Yes, there is. And with facial recognition, it's never been passed in Parliament. We've never voted on it.
Yeah.
It has been a tool that is invading our privacy. And yes, I can see in some cases it can be beneficial, but we've also seen incorrect accusations against people, especially from ethnic minorities.
Mm. Yeah, it's a very, very fair point, Jackie. So, I mean, thank you for all of those. That's Jackie in Oldham there. I appreciate your contribution this morning. Mark is in Lincolnshire. And, Mark, I wonder what you think about Palestine Action.
Hi there, Peter.
Hi there, how are you doing?
Hi there, mate. Yeah, not so bad, man. Yourself?
Yeah, all well, all well. What's your point this morning?
Yeah, well, a couple of points to make that I wanted to make anyway. First one, obviously, the Palestine Action thing. I think we have to be a little bit careful, if I'm honest, because I think there could be some element of government overreach with this, which is, yes, Palestine Action quite rightly have been prescribed, you know, for what they did, you know, attacking particularly military infrastructure, you know, a terrorist organisation. Yeah. However, people on the street protesting. Now, this is where I feel there's a bit of a grey area with this, because if you're out there, if you put it like this, in basic terms, if you're out there and you've got banners and you're saying Palestine Action should not be prescribed, we don't agree with Palestine Action being prescribed, yeah, unprescribe them, something like that, That is a free speech issue. There's nothing illegal with that.
Oh, totally. But the point is, Mark, and you're absolutely right, but they didn't do that. That's not what they did yesterday.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's fine. I get the point, if you see what I'm saying.
Sure.
Yes, if you're going to go out there and say, we are Palestine Action, blah, 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 then yes, you're breaking the law. Okay?
Yeah.
So I have no issue with that. What I'm saying is, we do need to be a little bit careful, you know?
What do we need to be careful about, do you think, Mark?
Well, we need to be careful on the wording of things, how people are protesting, if that makes sense.
But my point, I mean, I agree with you, and my point on the protest particularly is they could have said, they could have held up Deprescribe Palestine Action, they could have held up a poster that said, you know, I care about Palestine, or I support Palestine, or I support the Palestinian people. There's nothing wrong, there's nothing illegal with that. That's a perfectly legal thing to do. That is free speech. The problem is when you prescribe an organisation and then you say, I support Palestine Action, well, that by itself, it could hypothetically land you in prison for 14 years. I don't think it will. I don't think a single one of these people is actually going to spend a day behind bars. It'll be interesting to see how if they target the organisers properly. But they knew what they were doing here.
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, you know, equally they get around so many things, don't they? You know, they'll display their anti-Semitism, you know, by being anti-Zionist, for example. That kind of thing. So yes, this is what I'm saying. It's a little bit grey because you have to be so careful that you're not impeding people's right to free speech.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to do that, but I agree with you that supporting Palestine Action is something that shouldn't happen because they're a prescribed group. Mark, thanks for your call. Really appreciate it. Just on Aaron, the rower, Kim in North Wales says, what an amazing gentleman Aaron is. Good luck, matey, says Kim in North Wales. So thanks for that. Thank you to the person who says, how much did the UK spend on legal aid in each of the last 40 years in criminal, family and immigration cases? Billions. Stopping legal aid to asylum seekers would save billions and interrupt and stop the people trafficking. How much legal aid money was or is paid out to each lawyer each year? Well, sometimes there are those tables that come out. The answer is a heck of a lot. Paul says digital ID cards will lead to chipping of us all. That's Paul G in Dunoon. Chris says, just a quick question, why do we need digital identity when we already have national insurance numbers? Am I being thick? Chris, you're not being thick at all. First of all, we do have national insurance numbers. That is something that you should, you know, you've got to give your national insurance number if you want a job. In fact, you've got to show your passport if you want to get, if you want to have a job, if you want to sign a contract, for example, legitimately. The problem is so many people are not doing that. The thought is that this digital ID will solve that problem. I don't think it will. I think there'll be a lot of people who do all the right things, and still there'll be people who slip through the net, because no matter what the innovation is, there will be many, many people who will try to take the system and use it to their advantage. So you're not being thick at all, Chris, and there is a definite debate to be had on all of this. So thank you so much for your message. I just want to play a voice note now. This is from Ian on migration.
Hi Peter, it's Ian from East Grinstead. Considering 4 or 5 months ago we were on a war footing, I find it bizarre that we're letting hundreds and thousands of people come through the south coast. But at the same time, I find it bizarre that we're allowing these marches to go ahead with people who are clearly anti-Western values and anti-UK. So that's a war footing, is it?
I mean, I think those are good points. In regard to the marches, Ian, what I would say is that the fact that people can say the government's wrong, the people who can say this law doesn't work or is wrong, or the kind of free speech we have on this station where we talk about things we disagree with. Lots of people think Keir Starmer's a bit of a clown and shouldn't be running the country, for example. This kind of station doesn't exist in Gaza. This kind of station doesn't exist in the West Bank. This kind of station doesn't exist in Iran. This is the free speech that we cherish so much, and the freedom to disagree and to say those people, you know, I totally disagree with them on that march, but they have the right to march. That's the point. Do they have the right to support Hamas or Hezbollah? No, they absolutely don't. Do some of them have opinions that I think are absolutely abhorrent and I totally disagree with? Yes. Do they have the right to march? If they're within the law, the answer is yes, I'm afraid, even though I would never go on a march like that. Ian, thanks for your thoughts on that. We'll take some more voice notes and calls after the break. Stay with us.
they asked what was happening with the healthcare, and they said, oh, don't worry, to make sure that we don't run up NHS waiting lists, we've given all the migrants nice private healthcare. And everyone was like, wait, hang on, so they're getting, you know, posh Bupa or whatever, whilst I'm calling the doctors at 8 a.m. begging for an appointment. How's that fair?
I know.
And they said, oh, but it's great for you because it means that they won't be taking up any space in your NHS.
The logic of this stuff is appalling, isn't it? And I mean, how many millions is this costing? Because if they handed up 1 million NHS passes, and so 1 million people are accessing even what, £100 worth of free stuff?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So this big debate about digital ID has gone on for a lot of this week. Sarah Putin, the Reform UK MP, initially said she was for it, then she told Alex yesterday she'd changed her mind, she's against it. A lot of politicians talking about it. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, says the Conservatives are going to think a bit about it. Robert Jenrick spoke to me yesterday about it as well here on the show. This is what he said. He's the Shadow Justice Secretary for the Conservatives.
I'm personally against ID cards, and I don't think that they will make any contribution to stopping illegal migration. Look, if you are an employer who is employing illegal workers, in almost every case you're doing so dishonestly. You know that those people are not workers that you should be taking on. You're already obliged by the law to do checks into their visa and their status here in the UK. The black economy is very important. We've got to clamp down on it. I increased fines for employers who were employing people against the law tenfold when I was a minister. So those car washes, the nail bars, the construction sites, the care homes, the barbers, the places where people are, in some instances, employing workers illegally, they should be being raided. The employers should be being arrested and fined in accordance with the current laws.
Well, lots of reaction to that interview yesterday and indeed today, and indeed Robert Jenrick is in the Mail on Sunday. He's written a big article for them saying, I care more for my daughter's safety than the rights of foreign criminals. That's why I support every peaceful protester outside an asylum hotel. Maybe you're one of those peaceful protesters that we heard from Dean earlier. I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Give me a ring between now and 1 o'clock. Let's hear the views on migration from Vince on a voice note. You can send your voice note in, of course, on that number as well. That's what Vince has done.
Good morning. Just a quick line. I really cannot understand about this illegal immigration lark. The Labour government obviously doesn't have a clue. If they had any concern at all, they would have a cross-party reform, Liberal Democrats, Conservatives all together and say, right, how are we going to crack this? It's never going to happen. I've just seen a purple pig fly by, so I think that gives you a clue as to my feelings towards this. But Labour really do not have a clue, and I don't think it's going to be solved anytime soon, not even after the next general election. We've got millions of people coming, and it's a destabilisation, and it's backed by foreign powers. Good morning anyway. Thanks a lot for your time.
Well, thank you for that, Vince. There are quite a few people getting in touch about this, including Steve from Luton. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. You have some views on migration, Steve. What would you like to say this morning?
Well, it's come to the point where we've got to disregard the police, we've got to disregard the establishment because they're not listening to us. The people of Great Britain need to arm themselves and we need to patrol.
No, Steve. We don't need to arm ourselves. We don't need to do that at all, Steve.
Well, I could arm myself with sticks.
No, Steve. No, I don't want any violent action. I don't want anybody... No, Steve, listen to me. I don't want anybody to arm themselves. I don't want anybody to take any violent action. I want people to protest if they want to protest within the law.
Yeah, but sometimes you've got to break the law to get what we...
No, sorry, Steve. Got to take you off the air. Sorry, we cannot advocate that. We're not talking about that at all. We're totally condemn anybody breaking the law. Lots of people have made their points very, very well today. They have advocated peaceful protests. We've shown, Ciala Braverman argues anyway, that peaceful protests has worked in Waterlooville. We spoke to Dean earlier. He says there's still problems there, but at least people are listening. I'm afraid Steve is wrong. You should not be doing that. You should be within the law in all of your protests. Al is in London and has given me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Al, what would you like to say?
Hello. Yeah, I've just got one question for the Stand Up to Racism crowd. Let's assume that all these migrants are bona fide asylum seekers.
Yep.
How many refugees are welcome? Is it 1 million?
They never let us know. I've asked that question to the tree huggers on numerous occasions, Al, when I have them on my show, the Care for Calais kind of people and other organisations. I say, what is a level of migration that you're happy with? And they always say, well, we need to take more migrants. Yes, but how many? And where's the capacity? And that's the point, isn't it?
I mean, how long before they stop calling us names?
How long before what, sorry?
How long before the government and others stop calling us names for posing this?
Well, exactly, and there are many, many legitimate questions. You've put a very legitimate question forward today, Al, and you know that is not far right. That is not. You're not a thug. You're not someone who's saying anything that isn't true or posing a question that isn't fair, and that's why we have to have a reasonable discussion on this. Do you think we're beginning to have that reasonable discussion, or are we still being labelled as people like you being labelled in horrible ways, do you think, and inaccurate ways?
I'm certainly not a thug from a 69-year-old cripple. But yeah, I mean, it's absurd, and it's deliberate. It's a deliberate plot to. I don't care if it's a conspiracy theory or what. It's a deliberate plot to destroy this country. There's no two ways about that, and Ireland as well. You think so? You think it's deliberate that they're bringing in so many migrants? It's deliberate. It has to be deliberate. Okay. What would China do? Something very, very different. And many other, places far closer to home, places like Germany, they've had enough. Italy's had enough, and they've decided to actually do something about it. Look at the American example as well, Al. Yeah. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, Al, listen, thanks very much. I appreciate that. And thank you to Gary, who says your earlier caller expressed concern about the increased use of facial recognition software. But how is facial recognition software any more an invasion of my privacy than a dozen local coppers having the picture of a suspect wanted for questioning? It's just a more efficient way of catching criminals. From a freedom perspective, we should just concern ourselves with what the government makes illegal and what punishments are handed out to offenders. Once I'm happy with that, I don't care what resources the authorities use to catch lawbreakers. Thank you to Angela. He says our national insurance number should always be checked when going for a job, as this can be faked. But it's up to all employers to do this. So why are Uber, Just Eat, Deliveroo, all those different companies allowing people to swap out staff? These companies should surely be fined. Well, actually, there is some movement on that. The government says it's doing a crackdown. Well, look, just implement the law that's there already. They have upped the number of people after a campaign by The Sun. But the fact is that you've got to report these things. If you are getting a food delivery and it's not the person who they say it is, well, you've got to report it and you've got to follow it up. But these companies need to do much more. I totally agree with you, Angela, who also says Jackie is right. I was 50-50 due to the illegal migrant issue, but I agree with Jackie that government cannot be trusted with our data. I don't have the NHS app for that reason. I'm furious my passport photo is being used without my consent. My photo also looks nothing like me, so it's pretty funny, says Angela with her laughing emojis there on Twitter. Just on digital ID, I want to hear a voice note from David.
Good morning, Peter. Dave here. On about digital ID. Digital ID is a controlling method. It will control everything about you. If they don't like you, they can cancel you. They can cancel your bank accounts. They can do lots of things to you. Ordinary ID you carry around every day. If you're a driver, you have a driving license. So why don't we just have ordinary ID if that's the way we want to go? Good show, mate.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. It makes an awful lot of sense, and quite a number of people making similar points, so thank you for that. Martin in Whitley Bay says facial recognition technology mentioned by Jackie in her call, all it's done is to encourage those up to no good to cover their faces with no consequences. Digital ID will also be open to abuse, a new black market, a new adventure for theft. Think cloned bank cards and cars. If there's money in it, it will happen, says Martin. You sent me a couple of messages this morning, Martin, and you're speaking a lot of sense. It's great to hear from you. Are you a new person, or maybe we just haven't put through your messages before? I don't know. But either way, you're very, very welcome. And if you're someone who listens to this programme or watches this programme every single Saturday and Sunday, you're as welcome, more welcome actually, even than people who are just chancing upon us today. Everyone's welcome, and your views are welcome too. Whatever you think, if it's within the law, we heard one that wasn't, and that's why I took him off the air, but if it's within the law, free speech is where it's at here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Give us a call.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People smuggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would the people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... Those, the smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, when more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, "I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source." Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Yeah. Well, sure, the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You just can't say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. The government says it wants to deport all foreign criminals. Can it do so within the law? What about the migration situation here? What effect will it have on that? Palestine Action protesters have been in London. 466 of them have been arrested. Also, we'll talk to your former National Security Advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu in just a second in regard to what is happening in Israel. Lots and lots of international views about that. It affects us here at home as well, of course. We'll also talk later on about Ukraine. Big summit that is going to happen in Alaska on Friday between Trump and Putin. They'll be meeting for the first time in about 10 years. What about Zelensky? Should he be there? What do you think of all these issues? Digital ID as well. Loads of people want to get in on that, and you're very welcome to. You can give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can also send me a WhatsApp voice note. Less than a minute, please, otherwise Tech Up Dave gets very annoyed. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, just before we talk about the Middle East, I just want to take something head on. I've got a couple of messages here from various people. One, Mark says, while I agree we should, this is on Twitter, while I agree we should not arm ourselves, this is a dangerous path but the government are not listening to, so what can we do? People are getting angry and frustrated. Well, thank you for that, Mark, and I'm glad you agree with that. Another person says, Cardwell's cowardice is really quite shocking. We are heading into a civil war, and this, I'll not use the word, is still silencing the British public. By silencing that man who spoke about militant action, you're guaranteeing violence, Peter. You may have been his last resort before he snapped. I'm not guaranteeing violence at all. What I'm doing is staying within the law, and what happens if you incite violence, you can be, criminal action can be taken against that. person who was on, it could be taken against me, it could be taken against the station. And what I want at all times is people to remain within the law, to protest peacefully. Look at the peaceful protests that are happening at the moment. Yes, there were 15 arrests last weekend, but the vast majority of people at those migrant hotels have stayed totally peaceful, and they're undermining their argument if we either advocate or move into violence. That allows people to call people who agree with migrant hotels being closed as far-right thugs, for example. If you're violent, if you prove them right and you say that you're, and show that you are a thug or that your views are extreme or whatever, well, that's playing into their hands. So stay on the right side of the law. Make your protest peacefully. We're a democracy. We will deal with this in our own way, in a very British way. And violence is never the answer. And if someone advocates violence on my show, I am going to take them off the air to keep them on the right side of the law, to keep me on the right side of the law, to keep the station on the right side of the law, and just because it's the right thing to do that. And I'm not going to make any apology for that. Okay, let's talk about the Middle East now. Yaakov Amidror is with us. He is the former National Security Advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I wonder, in regard to Benjamin Netanyahu's idea in regard to taking over Gaza City, this upscaling of the war in Gaza, whether you think that's a good idea. There's been international condemnation. There are many people in Israel who disagree with it too. What do you think?
It is very interesting. In Israel, you can see three voices. One are against it, saying what important is to bring back the hostages, so let's finish the war and find kind of agreement with Hamas, not directly, but bring their hostages home and don't continue the war. I think that what they have in mind is something that cannot be implemented because Hamas is not ready to such a compromise. From the right wing, you can hear, don't do anything but take the whole Gaza Strip immediately together, do whatever is needed forcefully and without hesitation. I think that then after it was argued within the cabinet, it's clear that it cannot be done because the IDF is not big enough to do what they have in mind, and it will take time. And the third voice, which was led by the Prime Minister, is, okay, we are ready to take control of the whole Gaza Strip, but let's do it in stages so that it will be easier for the IDF. It will be longer in time, but at the meantime will be enough space for negotiations if Hamas will be ready to come back to the negotiation table. So this is the situation. The decision of the cabinet is to go to gain control of the whole Gaza Strip. It will take time to organize the IDF, to move the civilians out of the battlefield, which is very important from our point of view, and then to begin in the north in the Gaza Strip.
Moving the civilians out of the battlefield there are many civilians in Gaza who are living in intolerable humanitarian conditions. There's a lot of concern for them. I'm concerned for them. I know you and many other Israelis are as well. Moving them and displacing them is something that will be subject to an awful lot of criticism as well. Is that something that you believe is just inevitable as part of this plan? And I wonder if you think it is the right plan.
Look, we hear from all over the world what should not be done. But no one is telling us, okay, that should not be done, but the way to fight Hamas and to eliminate this terror organization from Earth after the atrocities of the 7th of October, no one is giving us any advice how we can do it. And
although about 75% of the Israeli public believes that the war should end now, that doesn't necessarily mean that Hamas would be eradicated. In fact, it would probably not mean that. It would probably mean the opposite of that. But I wonder at what stage Benjamin Netanyahu has to listen to his own public. Forget the international pressure, but his own public, because there are many people, including the head of the IDF, the army, who disagree with his plans.
No, the head of the IDF said that his intention is to destroy totally the Hamas. He has another military plan to encircle the enclaves in which Hamas is today and to raid in and out. And he believes that by that he will succeed to destroy Hamas completely. It's not argument. The argument was not about.
Okay, but there've been a number of very senior people, including former heads of the army, former heads of Mossad, Shin Bet, and others, who disagree with Netanyahu's approach here.
They don't agree. Well, they don't agree with Netanyahu in the last 6 years. They don't agree that when he had to decide to go into Rafah, they said don't go to Rafah, and we did. They said don't begin the war in Lebanon, and we did. They said don't begin the war with Iran. Iran is too strong, and we did. So the whole way was recommendations of ex-officials in Israel not to do something, and the Prime Minister decided to do it. Up till now, he did a very good job, and what succeeded to achieve.
I mean, many would. Okay, Yaakov.
What succeeded to achieve in Gaza, in Lebanon, and in Iran is very significant. It doesn't say that he is right now. Maybe he's wrong, but the fact that they are against it is saying nothing.
What would you be advising if you were still the national security advisor to Netanyahu? What would you be advising him to do? It sounds to me as if you think this is the correct plan. And I also wonder whether it's possible militarily, especially when you have so many Israeli reservists, for example, who are exhausted by the last 600 plus days of war.
This is why the chief of staff was for the different plan. He said because of the situation within the reserve units, which are serving 200 days or 300 days in the last 2 years, he says, let's do it in another way. I agree that we should destroy Hamas totally, but the way that I'm offering to do it is by encircling the areas, don't let the food coming in, and we will raid in and out all the time, and slowly we will eradicate the Hamas. This is not about the principle. This is about the technical way to do it. In principle, it was an agreement between the chief of the IDF and the prime minister that Hamas should be destroyed. How to do it was an argument between the two sides, and the cabinet at the end of the day, remember that Israel is democracy, not generals are making the decisions. It's the civilians who are making the decisions at the end. Probably in Britain it's the same. The decision was that the IDF is preparing itself to gain total control of the Gaza Strip area, and then a decision will be taken about the future. This is why, by the way, why the right wing doesn't like the decision.
And in terms of the eradication, the defeat of Hamas, that I absolutely want to happen in some form. I'm not sure this is the right strategy, but the point I suppose I would put to you is that already Hamas have said that this approach of taking Gaza City will endanger the life of the remaining hostages. Many of the hostage families have protested against the Israeli government, have said that this is the wrong plan. I wonder how confident you are that the 20 or so remaining living hostages will be returned under the plan that Netanyahu has, because any further loss of life of those hostages, it would be a disaster for him, would it not? And a human tragedy.
He faced an impossible decision that I'm glad that I'm not in his position to make the decision, because it is either you give up the idea of eradicating Hamas and you will stay in the Gaza Strip, Israel will stay in Gaza Strip with Hamas controlling the Gaza Strip. Gaza Strip is not going to disappear, and Hamas control Gaza Strip. The meaning of it is in the future we will have to face the same threat that we had before the 7th of October. That was one option, but to save theoretically all the hostages, or to say, no, I am ready to endanger the life of the hostages, but I'm quite sure that after the end of this war in Gaza, we will have to face Gaza without Hamas. It doesn't say that Hamas will not be in Gaza. It will be like the West Bank. From time to time, we will have to make some operations, but Hamas is not controlling Gaza.
I mean, are you saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Yaakov, but are you saying that the lives of the hostages
could be a sacrifice worth making if it defeats Hamas. As I say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that sounds to me as if that's what you're saying.
No question that their life would be in a bigger danger than if we giving up and capitulate, and Hamas will continue to control Gaza. And this is why it is not an easy decision to make. Either you say, okay, I'm surrender to all the demands of Hamas, and this is what Hamas wants, and I'll save probably the 20 hostages which are still alive in Gaza, or I'm ready to fight to eradicate Hamas and endanger the life of these 20 hostages.
Tell me about the idea that Netanyahu has that once Hamas is eradicated, if in fact that is possible, that a civilian government will take over in Gaza. I mean, surely that government would be seen as a puppet of Israel, and there would be many people in Gaza who would not recognise its legitimacy, especially when Israel has had a hand, rightly or wrongly, in the humanitarian catastrophe that is Gaza at the moment.
No, I think that who is responsible for the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza is Hamas.
I agree with you. I agree with you, and they certainly started things on the 7th of October, but you cannot argue that Israel dropping many bombs on Gaza has not contributed to the humanitarian catastrophe that is there now, can you?
Yes, but the alternative was not to fight Hamas, so it's not an alternative that Israel can accept. The alternative not to fight Hamas and not have any humanitarian problem inside Gaza, you are right. If Israel decided not to fight Hamas after the 7th of October, probably the people of Gaza would continue the celebration after the 7th of October. They were very satisfied from what happened in the 7th of October, and without fighting Hamas, they could be even more happy with the situation in Gaza. Yes, you are right. If Israel decides not to fight Hamas after the 7th of October, probably the situation in Gaza would be better than it is today. But it's not, from the Israeli point of view, it was not an alternative that Israel can adopt. And we had to fight Hamas, and that's what we are doing, and we continue to do it. The minute that Hamas will stop fighting, Israel will retreat from the Gaza Strip. We don't have any claim for the Gaza Strip. We don't want to control the Gaza Strip. We don't have any settlement in the Gaza Strip, in spite of what people in the far right wing of the Israeli wing are saying. What we want is to defend Israel by controlling and having the ability to act in Gaza militarily if any threat will emerge. Other than that, we don't have any interest in Gaza, and the people of Gaza can continue to live as much as they want, the way that they want, that they decided on. About the third party that might come, we had many conversations around the Middle East and out of the Middle East about who will be responsible in Gaza the day after. And there are some Arab countries which are ready to come to help to control Gaza and to rebuild Gaza. For that, they have to invest huge money. Everyone is saying to us, if you want us to come, get rid of Hamas. So the only chance to have in Gaza proper life without terrorist organization controlling the Gaza, if we want anyone from the international community or the Middle East community to come in to help the people of Gaza to rebuild Gaza, the prerequisite for that, as they are telling us, not we, they are telling us, if you want us in, get rid of Hamas. And we intend to get rid of Hamas.
Tell me, in regard to the United Kingdom, Sir Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister here, has said that he wants to recognise a state of Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September. There are some suggesting that the Israeli security establishment should not cooperate with the United Kingdom as a result of that. You're a former National Security Advisor to Netanyahu. What do you make of that situation?
I think that it's not just unfair, it's stupid. It's unfair because it is giving kind of price to Hamas. Hamas might say afterwards, yeah, guys, we paid huge price to see the situation in Gaza, but we achieved huge achievement. United Kingdom is with us, with the Palestinians. So from our point of view, maybe we, the people of Gaza, we pay the price because what the atrocities of the 7th of October, but United Kingdom is paying us for that and recognize the Palestinian state. But it's stupid, not just because what I said, because in the future, all what we want to achieve from the Palestinians, you and us and the Americans, to be more moderate, to get rid of the corruption of the Palestinian system of today, to bring the Palestinians to agree with some accommodation with the state of Israel. We are losing the leverage. If United Kingdom and others recognize the Palestinian state without getting rid of the corruption, without moderating the Palestinian Authority, without making all the changes that people are speaking about within the Palestinian Authority. So why should they be more moderate in the future? Why will they get rid of the corruption? They can continue. United Kingdom is with them. So it's unfair in one side, but stupid in the other side. Politically, I'm speaking from point of view of those who believe that the Palestinian state is a solution. I personally believe that it's not a solution. It will not happen. 90% of the Israelis don't want it, and it will not happen. But from the point of view of those which recommend us to agree to a Palestinian state, it was unfair and stupid. Unfair because it's, as I said, it's promoting or Hamas because it's success of Hamas, no question. And it's stupid because no one will be ready to compromise after you have the recognition.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. That's Yaakov Amador, who is a former national security advisor to the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Lots to think about in that. If you've got some thoughts on it, let me know. 0344 499 1000. We'll take your views after the break.
Months. They're dragging their heels again. So it remains national police policy and CPS policy that we do not get told when there's been a rape or an alleged rape or a sexual assault or a violent crime. We do not get told that the suspects are asylum seekers. So that is why around the country, communities are furious. The fact of the migrant crisis and the fact that we've been hoodwinked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including Craig in Staffordshire, who says, can we have a call to all the bakers across the UK when the Palestine supporters see the citizens of Gaza's lives improve so much under Israel's control? They're going to need a lot of humble pie.
Let's hope that happens. Let's hope some sort of solution can be found. I'm not sure Netanyahu's plan is the right one, but then if you want to eradicate Hamas, maybe it is. Maybe this is the logical conclusion. Maybe this was always going to happen. And I mean, it's hard to know. I'm genuinely conflicted. Jane says the Prime Minister needs to protect our borders and keep his citizens safe, as he is falling back on that. Perhaps he should take a back seat in fixing the countries of the world until he fixes his own. Jan on voice notes has been very naughty indeed. She's gone 2 seconds over the 1 minute limit. Tech Up Dave is spitting out his custard creams in annoyance. But Jan, we've had a big discussion and we've decided we're just going to play your message because it's actually a good one on the migration system, doing it legally being a nightmare. Let me know your thoughts on what Jan says after you hear this.
Hi Peter, great show. On the illegal immigrants, like I've said before, we have to pay to come back into our own country, but my son-in-law is Turkish. My daughter lived in Turkey for nearly 15 years. She didn't become a citizen. They had 2 children, decided to come back to England. He has done everything by the book. It's cost him thousands in NHS charges, which is, you know, he's never used the NHS, but he has to pay it, and his visas, and they bought a house. He pays taxes because he's allowed to work. He's got a work visa. You know, why is it that you go down the legal route, it costs you thousands, go down the illegal route, you get everything for nothing? I mean, it's an absolute joke. Makes my blood boil.
Anna, sorry, Jan, thanks for your thoughts on that. Anna's next.
Afternoon, Peter. It's Anna in Surrey. At work again on a Sunday, like a mug. I do everything right. I do everything legal. I don't need an ID card. I already do that. 5 minutes up the road is Potter's Hotel, full of illegals, facilitated by the government. They don't have ID cards. They probably don't know who they are. They're given everything by the government. Most of them sneak off into car washes, nail bars, yada yada, to work in the black market. How does having an ID card help that? Well, I'll be the one with the ID card. They're already given everything and they're illegal. I mean, absolute tosh, Peter. Cheers, guy.
That totally makes sense. You're the one with the ID card, and I'll tell you something, they're probably not going to give us these digital IDs for free. I'd be very surprised if they do. There'll be some charge, or even if we don't pay up front, we'll certainly be paying on, you know, in our taxation and all the rest of it. Thank you to this person who says, great debates today, Peter. Why spend millions on facial recognition when there has still been no move to ban face coverings, be it balaclavas, burqas and headscarves, etc. Another person, Teresa, says, at what point do we say no more as we are full? Surely we can't sustain this for much longer. It must be impossible to continue. Let's talk about the Israeli issue. Anne and Anthony are on the line, and these are in regard to the Palestine Action protesters. Anne in Sheffield can go first on this one. Anne, what would you like to say?
Good morning, Peter.
Hi there.
The protesters yesterday that were arrested, the signs all said, I don't support genocide. I support Palestine Action.
Yeah.
But the Palestinian and Hamas want the genocide of all Jews.
Correct.
So, in effect, the hypocrites.
I totally agree. I also think that I'm not sure, well, lots of people call what Israel is doing a genocide. I don't think that's accurate. I think people are using that phrase for a specific reason, because they're echoes of the Holocaust and they want to compare the Israeli state to the Nazis, which is unfair and untrue. You're absolutely right in terms of those protesters. I think they knew exactly what they were doing on.
Yeah, I do as well. And, you know, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
The way the country is at the minute is just lunacy.
Anne, listen, thanks so much for your thoughts. I really appreciate that. That's Anne in Sheffield. Anthony in Leeds has given me a ring as well. You can too. 0344 499 1000. Hi, Anthony.
They look at Israel as they looked at Zimbabwe or Northern Rhodesia, and that's how they look at Israel. And it's becoming a problem for these politicians, especially Keir Starmer, and that book cake in Canada, They just want rid of it, Alan.
Well, I think there's a really, Anthony, I think there's a really interesting point made there.
And let's be honest, we know why the State of Israel happened. You can go back to last war, or back to World War One. You know what Germans did to Jews, and they killed
World War II,
Jews in Poland. Yeah. So, where did they go to?
Well, I think it's a very good point, Anthony. I think a lot of people will agree with you. Thank you also to Rob in London, who says, "Morning, Peter. How dare this government flood our beautiful seaside towns such as Bournemouth? These are places we as British people hold dear in our hearts, and they are now being destroyed by housing these illegal immigrants who don't hold any of our values and cultural values. They need to be moved out and deported. We are sick to death of this now," says Rob in London. Brian in Fife: "So foreign criminals can come here and commit rape and murder. They will be deported immediately without any repercussions for their actions. Another, come to Britain and do what you like," says Brian in Fife. Brian, I agree with you. I do think there are problems with this policy, and it's not just a matter of getting people out of the country. They've got to serve their time. They've got to make sure that they're punished for those kind of crimes. And Brian, I think you're absolutely right. I think these points are being missed. Linda says illegal entrants and visa overstayers should be arrested, photographed, DNA'd, detained and deported. Graham in Milton Keynes says, "Great show as always." Thank you, Graham. "I would like to see only women and males under 10 on migrant protests. This would remove the risk of testosterone-charged anger and possible violence, which immediately undermines the message." Zarina says, "Digital ID has been discussed for years. It is possible that the powers we're..." Hold on, sorry, let me get this right. Digital ID has been discussed for years. Is it possible that the powers that are being used in regard to migrant, illegal or otherwise people trafficking to place the indigenous and lawful citizens into a state of submission? It sounds far-fetched, but the morality of leaders around the world appear to be consumed by power and money. How much is digitising people's worth, and who in society and other societies gain? The world is going mad, and I'm afraid for all of us. Leslie says, "Protesting in the streets against hotels will do absolutely nothing. The only way is by financial methods." Adam in Birmingham: "Can you explain what the difference between Israel going into Gaza and taking out the terrorist regime and NATO going into Afghanistan and Iraq to take out evil regimes there, because no government complained when NATO did that?" It's a very good point, Adam, although that was of course by, well, some level of international consensus, certainly with Afghanistan. Iraq obviously a totally different kettle of fish. Thomas in Northern Ireland says, "I totally agree with Yakov. No two-party state. I'm disgusted that the UK government is supporting this." And final one before the break from Ernie, who said, "How about asking the people of Gaza what they want? Israel is in a position of power now to hold a referendum of the people on whether they want to stay aligned to Hamas or if they want to go it alone with help from people around the world." Interesting thought there. Plenty of calls coming in. We will make sure we get as many of them on the air between now and 1 o'clock when the programme ends. I'm going to talk to Mary Dejevsky next about Ukraine and Russia, this summit between Putin and indeed President Trump happening in Alaska on Friday. We always learn something from Mary. We're about to do that with her next here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, let's talk to Mary Dejevsky now. She is a foreign affairs columnist for The Independent and has spent much of her working life in Moscow. Mary, it's a wee while since we've had a chat. It's wonderful to have you on the programme again. And what greater occasion could there be than a summit in Alaska for Putin and Trump? Alaska, you know, California, as I'm sure you'll know, is called the Sunshine State. Alaska is known as the last frontier. Is it on this occasion?
Well, it's absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, everybody was taking bets on whether it was going to be a sort of conventional place like Geneva, or whether it was going to be maybe in the Middle East, as the sort of new trend has been. And lo and behold, suddenly it's Alaska. I think it's a brilliant, brilliant choice because, you know, you've got there's the US element and there's the Russian element. I mean, where could it possibly be better? But it's an awful long way for both Trump and Putin to get to, if, as the current talk is, that maybe Zelensky may go too, you know, suddenly Alaska is going to become the centre of the world.
Well, indeed, they can all stay with Sarah Palin. I just wonder. There was the comedian on Saturday Night Live famously said, "I can see Russia from my house."
Exactly.
I wonder, Mary. I mean, there's an awful lot that's at stake here, and Trump gets often criticised. My argument would be, at least they're talking. Can they get a resolution on Friday, or is that just hopelessly naive? Is this just the start of a much longer term process?
Well, I think that it's very, very interesting that this is happening at all. And I agree that this is progress. I also reject the idea of people who say that Trump has basically rolled over to what Putin wants. I don't think this is true. I think that for this meeting to happen, for Trump to agree to meet Putin, which is something that Putin has really, really wanted ever since Trump came to the White House for the second time, Putin must have agreed at least to consider maybe, if not changes in his position, then at least a sort of openness to negotiations, which, while he's sort of professed in theory, hasn't actually been evident in practice. So I think maybe the fact that this meeting has happened suggests to me that there is more flexibility than there has been in recent months. I also think that you know, we've been through several versions of this summit just in the last 48 hours or so, and we'll probably go through a good more of them before next Friday. But the original thought was that there was going to be a bilateral summit between Putin and Trump, and that there might be a trilateral, including Zelensky, and that there would be these two parts. Now, initially, this was completely ruled out. It was excluded by the Ukrainians. Then there were all complaints from the Europeans saying, "Oh, the Ukrainians have got to be involved." Suddenly, in the last few hours, the possibility is being broached that Zelensky may be there too.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know that this is going to happen, but that would also be extremely.
Certainly, a couple of the major networks in America talking about that overnight as well. We've also had in the last few days, in the last 48 hours, I should say, Trump talking about the fact that there might be some sort of land swap. I mean, that just seems completely unrealistic, is it?
Well, it does seem completely unrealistic because it's hard to see what there is to swap. I mean, it's quite clear to see what Russia is occupying, which isn't as much as Russia would like to occupy or wants to claim in terms of a final settlement that it would think was satisfactory, which is basically the whole of the Donbass. So it's very unclear to me what could constitute a swap. But there's also the question of recognition that if there were any borders sort of changed, that basically the whole of the Western world would reject any sort of recognition of that. So it would simply remain an illegal Russian occupation, and I don't think that's really what Russia is after in terms of a settlement at all. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Ukraine may or may not still be occupying a very, very small part of Russian territory, which maybe originally they'd hoped would be that they'd be able to use as a sort of bargaining counter, but they don't seem to have held on to that. And it's largely unpopulated land. It's not going to be very useful for anybody.
What do you make of the European dimension for this? We're told that the Americans actually asked all these different European nations to take part.
their statement, really interestingly, the statement of a lot of these leaders, including Keir Starmer, interestingly didn't mention NATO at all. It'll be interesting to see, I suppose, what the other countries, what European countries, including our own, do in regard to this, the backup rule that they have, because this is billed as a big face-off between two men, but it's a lot more than that as well, isn't it, Mary?
No, absolutely. I mean, I find the European role here, or mostly the lack of it, has been both sort of disappointing from a European perspective, given all the hopes about Europe being able to take a diplomatic role, not just with Ukraine. Also, that since Trump came to power for the second time, Europe has really seemed to be very much on the sidelines, and also for the first few months seemed to be playing an almost opposite game, trying to sabotage what Trump was trying to do in terms of mending fences with the Russians, and reaching a quick solution possibly over Ukraine. But it seems to me that the vocabulary of the Europeans has changed fantastically, really just in the last couple of months, that instead of talking mostly about new supplies of weapons and finance for Ukraine to enable it to continue the war, suddenly all the vocabulary coming from Europe is now about negotiations.
Yeah, and that's a marked shift, isn't it?
Peace.
Yeah.
And this is a complete change around, and it means that, to that extent at least, in terms of the wording, that the Europeans are suddenly much closer to being on the same page with the Americans than they were before.
Really interesting. As always, Mary, great to talk to you. That's Mary Dejevsky there, Foreign Affairs columnist at The Independent. Thank you to her for that. You always learn so much with Mary, and of course there's so many people for such a long time saying, send more munitions, as Mary said there at the end, send more munitions, more weapons, fight the war, fight the war. Suddenly, they're all talking about peace, and the first person really to talk about peace. I'm critical of him quite a lot, but President Trump really brought that forward. At least they're talking. Let's hope the misery for millions in Ukraine ends as a result of this talks process. We'll take your thoughts on everything we've been talking about today after the break. Make sure you get your call in. Use the break to make the call, 0344 499 1000. We'll have plenty of opinions coming your way between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with us.
They're dragging their heels again. So it remains national police policy and CPS policy that we do not get told when there's been a rape or an alleged rape or a sexual assault or a violent crime. We do not get told that the suspects are asylum seekers. So that is why around the country, communities are furious. The fact of the migrant crisis and the fact that we've been hoodwinked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Patrick, who's given me a ring from Dublin. Patrick, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, good morning or good afternoon to you all.
In relation to, I'm just looking at the mass migration and how the West has supported it over the years and the dangers that will ensue if we don't roll back a wee bit. We have seen that over the years, especially with the Netanyahu and his government, they've all gone down the same road of trying to destroy Palestine. Also, too, some years ago was mooted about destruction of Libya, Syria, Iraq and those countries. And the West, unfortunately, supported those.
Well, I think Netanyahu was trying to destroy Hamas. He's not trying to destroy Fatah at the moment, for example.
That is, you see, that is the disguise. At the moment, people are saying if they destroy Hamas, we can actually give a good life to the Palestinians. It doesn't happen like that. We use the same argument when we destroyed, when we killed Colonel Gaddafi. Again, the idea was that we would actually give a much better life to people in Libya.
Is your view, Patrick, I'm interested just in regard specifically to Israel, is your view that Netanyahu's game plan is to, I mean, he says he wants to control all of Gaza to give it back to the Palestinians. He says he wants a civilian government there. Clearly you don't believe him.
I don't believe him, and I'll tell you why. We have seen over the years, and just let me finish in relation to how he
sure,
promoted the wars in other countries. When Libya was destroyed, we opened the gateway to Africans, migrants coming this way. When we destroyed Afghanistan, Syria, the same thing. In 2003, we had 4 million Christians displaced. So Netanyahu does not mind who gets displaced, but they won't be in Israel, and they'll end up coming west, which is into Europe. So we have to be very careful how we tread down this road. And it is only Europe, and we have supported America, unfortunately, in going in destroying, for instance, Iraq. But who has suffered mostly from it? Europe has suffered mostly from it.
I think the Iraqi people have probably suffered most from it, but I know the point you're making, Patrick.
So that's the argument I'm using.
Sure.
In supporting some governments, we have to be very, very careful in trying to say to people in some of those countries, look, we'll give you a better life if you allow us to do this, and this. They will not, because when you see what's happening to Gaza and the lands there, it's going to be almost uninhabitable. It's been destroyed so much.
Well, we'll see if it gets rebuilt and what the future looks like for us.
Careful.
Okay.
As I say to you, I do not believe Netanyahu. I don't.
Sure. Okay. Well, Patrick, thanks for your point. I really appreciate it. That's Patrick in Dublin there. Adam is in Birmingham. Adam, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I already WhatsApped you about it. What it is, I don't understand what the difference is between Israel going into Gaza to take out the regime there as what NATO did in Afghanistan, Iraq, and help bomb places like Syria.
Well, I think a lot of people will agree with you, and the fact is that, I mean, there are differences, of course, in the reasons for doing so, but nonetheless, Israel was attacked by Hamas. They say they want to eradicate Hamas. They've been very clear about that. I mean, Netanyahu's plan to take all of Gaza, do you think that's the right plan?
Yeah and no. Like you say, look at what we did with Afghanistan and look at what we did with Iraq. First of all, when Kuwait was invaded by Saddam Hussein, the world went to Kuwait's help, got him out. A couple of years later, we went in, we bombed Iraq, took Saddam Hussein out, and look at the mess the country's in now.
Certainly. Well, Adam, thanks for your points there. Janet's in North Wales and has some thoughts on Palestine Action, I think, Janet.
Hi, Peter.
Hi there, how are you doing?
How are you? Well, I'm fine, are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you, fine, thank you. What would you like to say?
Okay, so my granddaughter is half Palestinian. But I have to admit that most of what I know about the region is from reading Leon Urich's Exodus.
Okay.
So, but from what I'm seeing and what I'm seeing about people in general and all the Palestine Action and all of this stuff, it really scares me, Peter, because nobody wants to engage in a proper conversation. It seems to be some kind of collective brainwashing that's going on. Nobody wants to engage in the actual facts of what is happening there. And I think I agree with you. These people, Hamas, I don't know how Israel is supposed to deal with these people other than what they are proposing to do.
Well, it's a really interesting point, and I am genuinely conflicted on this, Janet. I suppose the question I have
now is how can you minimise civilian casualties in all of this, because that's a really, really big point. And I'm not sure if if Netanyahu sends the army in to take Gaza City and the whole of the Gaza Strip, those are going to be the most difficult bits. There are going to be lots of civilian casualties. Yes, you'll kill a lot of terrorists for whom I will shed no tears whatsoever. But I am really worried about the humanitarian situation there. What I would do, I'm not saying I know how to do these things, but what I would do if I were him is flood the whole area with food. Loads and loads of food, make sure everybody has enough food, because Hamas are using it as a weapon. It's become incredibly complicated in regard to Israel's role, lots of criticism because people are starving. Get rid of that issue, flood it with food, make sure everybody has enough to eat, and then they'll look to Israel as a force that wants to help the civilians and wants to get rid of the terrorists. That's what I would do.
I think they have to do both, though, don't they? And I think we have to call on the neighbouring countries.
Yeah.
And more needs to be said about those neighbouring Arab countries.
You rarely hear about Egypt. I mean, certainly it is Israel that controls the border, but nonetheless, Egypt could do more, certainly from the humanitarian perspective. Janet, listen, great call.
Absolutely, but I think more needs to be done to explain to people this, because it really, really frightens me, Peter, how many people who seem to be indoctrinated, is the word I'm going to use, who will not engage in any discussion about this, who are absolutely, Israel is awful.
Oh, Israel's always wrong. The West's always wrong. America's always wrong. The UK is always wrong. I mean, that is the mantra we hear, and it's so unsophisticated, Janet, isn't it? It's
unsophisticated, but it's also frightening.
Yeah,
if people in our country are quite happily supporting these awful regimes and thinking that they're great, and you think, well, you know what? In 10 years' time, I'll come back and say, well done you, but it's my grandchildren that are going to suffer for it.
Thank you so much for your very considered and intelligent opinion there, Janet. If only people had the level of knowledge and the compassion and indeed the interest in the subject as you do, Janet, the world would be a better place no matter what people's opinions on the matters were. I just want to hear a voice note now from Fee about Israel.
Hi, Peter. On the Israeli wanting to target Hamas front and get the hostages out, here's a thought. Why doesn't Egypt and Jordan open their borders, set up temporary refugee camps for the innocent civilians, take the innocent civilians to these camps, let them stay there, let Israel go in and get Hamas and get the hostages, and then those citizens can return back to Gaza? Just a thought.
Thank you for it, Fee. I really appreciate it. Jake has sent me a voice note as well.
Simplest way to solve the crisis of the immigration and people coming over here illegally is to deport them all, get rid of them. You know, how's it fair in this country? We have a homeless crisis. You know, there's kids on the street. These people come into the country illegally and they get these things, they get all these grants and all these benefits, paying for driving lessons, they get this accommodation. You know, why can't the homeless have it? You know, I do think we should help people, but we should help our own people first. It only makes sense. You know, sort your own people out. Get your country to a better state before you can even think about helping people.
Jake, thanks for your message. Tristan has been in touch as well.
Morning, Peter. I'm going to put it quite bluntly and quite straightforwardly. I work full time. I also have to work another job as well. And I just don't want to keep paying my taxes for migrants that are literally getting everything for free. Simple as that. I have to work extra to put money into my pension, work extra to put money away in my savings for later life. And I don't want to keep working all the time thinking that the money that I'm paying my taxes for is going towards migrants that get everything for free. I've had enough, and I think a lot of other people have obviously had enough as well. Haven't seen it that bad in Bedford, but I'm sure it's on the way. And when it is, I will be definitely out there protesting. Great show.
Tristan, thank you very much. Leslie says Israel has to destroy Hamas, otherwise all the lives lost in Gaza and Israel have been for nothing. Hamas have to be defeated. Claire in Buckley says, hi Peter, why don't we don't want to pay for illegal immigrants in the hotels, so why should we pay for them in prisons? While I agree they should be held to account for any crimes committed, we can't deport them to serve their sentences. Can't we deport them to serve their sentences in another country? Yeah, but it depends on the country and whether they will put them in prison or not. That's one of the issues. It's a complex thing. Leslie says, what would happen to migrants found without an ID? Will they be deported? What happens to UK citizens refusing a digital ID? Howard in Sussex says, I think politicians think digital ID will magically bring up all the history of the migrants. Crazy lack of technical understanding. Politicians are like asking someone to read a book who cannot read. And Gary says we should never negotiate with terrorists who take hostages. The fact that all too frequently governments do is why terrorists keep taking them. Israel has already conceded far too much to get back the hostages that have already been released. I hate to say it, but they effectively need to write off the remaining ones and continue the process of crushing Hamas, including going after all the leaders who live a life of luxury and other countries in the region. Gary, I can't agree with you. I just writing off the hostages is something I just don't believe should happen. Everything has to be done to get those hostages back, whether there are 20 of them or more, and the bodies as well. It's incredibly important. It's just absolutely dreadful what is happening. I want to take a call from Grace, who has been in touch, 0344 499 1000. Grace, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi. Many things to reflect on from what other people have said. I think to me it feels like a kind of quasi-religious thing going on, whereby people who are rightly concerned about the horrendous situation in Gaza, and it's kind of obviously hard for us to know exactly what's going on there on the ground, but clearly some people are suffering. There is starvation, and I've experienced starvation in a sense myself with an eating disorder, which is not the same thing, obviously, but my point being that to be really emaciated as well as hungry is a particular experience that's horrible. I'm not saying that my situation was anything like that. No,
I know, but you know what it's like to be starving. That's all you're saying. Yeah, absolutely.
So people are rightly concerned about people in Gaza, but some people seem to think that the way to react to that is to despise all kinds of people who they don't fully agree with, and to be angry and hateful, and that's not helping the situation. And just like I say, it's kind of quasi-religious. It's kind of like they feel morally upright.
Yeah, they do, and everybody who disagrees with them is wrong and morally wrong.
Yeah, and is it Pascal Foster Robinson? Is that
Robinson Foster? Yeah.
Robinson Foster, sorry.
Yeah.
You were wanting us not to say his name, but I
No, I'm being sarcastic when I do that. No, you can say it as often as you like, Grace.
But seeing the way that he was kind of just trying to incite more anger and rage, it doesn't help. It really doesn't help the people in Gaza.
It's all. Thank you, Grace. Thank you. It is all totally demonstrative. It is nonsense. It is just him trying to say, look at me, I really, really care about these people. He doesn't. He cares about himself. He cares about his own profile.
I was thinking about Band-Aid, and then similarly artists were probably largely trying to get some attention for themselves and feel good about themselves, but they were also genuinely concerned about people who are hungry, as some people now are concerned about people who are hungry in Gaza, but they were doing something that was positive. I find it very weird sometimes how I see people online saying, we did Band-Aid, so why are there still people who are hungry? Well, no, people are still hungry because the world is a mess. There's more wealth coming to our part of the world.
And Bob Geldof can't fix it all,
exactly.
even though he tried to.
But it did help. It was positive.
Yes.
Whereas now we've got artists trying to supposedly speak up for hungry people by just inciting more anger, and it doesn't help the world.
I cannot disagree with a single word you've said, Grace. Thank you. That is a great call. That's Grace in London there. I want to play one more voice note. This is about Rupert Lowe and the boats.
Good morning, Peter. It's Simon from Devon. Just in support of Rupert Lowe, I live near Torquay in South Devon, and we have signs up near the beach asking us to report any visible sightings of, I won't say